stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Get that phone thing. Just want to make sure my cell phone's. I'm sorry? Thank you. I'll remind everybody else because I forgot to turn your cell phones down.
I'm stunned.
Yeah, it's done. Announcements. I just want to make sure you know that Tom Mahon is excused from the meeting this evening, and Bill Boyd is not here yet, but I'm assuming he is coming. The general election will be held on Tuesday, November 8th from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The three polling locations are the James Mastrocola Upper Elementary School, the Merrimack Middle School, and St. John Newman Church. Please contact the town clerk's office at 424-3651 or visit the New Hampshire Secretary of State's website to find your specific polling location. You can get the State Department's website on our website. There's a link that goes right to it. The town offices and the Merrimack Transfer Station will be closed on Friday, November 11th in observance of Veterans Day. We would like to take this opportunity to express our appreciation to the members of our military, past and present, and thank you for your service. The Town Council meets on the first and third Thursdays in the month of November and December on the following dates. These are all regular meetings. Thursday, November 17th at 7 p.m. here in the Matthew Thornton Room. Thursday, December 1st, again here at 7 p.m. And again on Thursday, December 15th at 7 p.m., again here in the Matthew Thornton Room. Eileen?
Okay. The Merrimack Police Department and Merrimack Department of Public Works want to remind all residents that the winter parking ban will start November 15th in accordance with the town ordinance, which states that no vehicle or trailer shall be parked on any public street or highway between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. from November 15th to April 15th. The police department will ticket those vehicles parked on public streets and found to be in violation of the ban. Vehicles that are found to be impeding snow removal operations will be towed if an attempt to contact the owner of the vehicle is not successful and it is not removed immediately. All costs associated with the towing are the responsibility of the owner of the vehicle. The library's 7th annual turkey shoot family fun night of raffles will be Friday, November 18th at the Wasserman Park Function Hall. Doors open at 6:30. Win all or part of your Thanksgiving dinner. Live music by local New Hampshire band called Roll the Dice, sponsored by Friends of the Library. For more information, please visit the Merrimack website at www.merrimacklibrary.org. The McGaw Bridge Road project is nearly complete. The Department of Public Works will be hosting a ribbon cutting for this opening of the bridge on Thursday, November 10th at 2 p.m. at the bridge. All are encouraged to attend the ceremony that will celebrate the reopening of the bridge while remembering the history of the former McGaw Bridge. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to make note that Bill Boyd arrived at 7:02. Okay, PFOA update. There is no news since our meeting a week ago. Any comments from the press or public? Seeing none. There are no recognitions, resignations, or retirements. Okay, appointments. Annual meeting with the Technology Committee. So will committee chair Dustin? Is it Lukonen? I was pretty close.
The emphasis on the wrong syllable.
Long syllable. Per Town of Merrimack Charter, Section 6-6, at least annually, there should be an annual review with the Technology Committee. This agenda item is to highlight the committee's significant actions, current projects, anticipated actions, and to raise any concerns the council should know or act upon. Good evening, Dustin.
Good evening, everyone. In terms of updates, we had 2 meetings so far this year. Usually we have 3 around this time, but it's been a difficulty getting everyone together in terms of availability. But nonetheless, keep trying. Mid-year, a member left, unfortunately, but we also just gained a new member, so that evened it out. Not a lot of requests from the council, but we still have our usual technology issues. Some of them, such as backups, network security, our expenditure on licenses and software, and also dependencies on our the current employees for the town. We discuss that at length quite often, and one of the potential solutions to that touches on each of those is technologies such as virtual desktops and Google Apps, which are just a couple examples. There's Microsoft Office 365, which is a relatively similar product that's basically online. It's a virtual, everything's hosted online, nothing is on the user's computer. So that basically, removes the need for any backing up. Everything's backed up by the company, which is one of their big priorities, so it's pretty safe to say, and we've discussed that before. Network is obviously part of that. Obviously, you need to have a network connection to access all that, so that's one of the drawbacks. But in terms of security, that's another one of their top, in terms of motivations and keeping everything secure and encrypted. That's one of their number 1 factors. And license expenses, which compares to our current expenditures, which are quite high. I mean, I believe it's over $100,000 a year in software licenses or around there. So that would be, you'd make up for that for the monthly fee that a product like this would offer. So, I mean, one of the issues is just deciding on a product and getting an estimate. And obviously, I don't know where the town council stands on financial resources for this type of product, but just migration is another problem. A lot of employees have different software, so migrating that would be another big expense. But these are the kind of issues that we talk about pretty much every meeting. So I don't know if anyone has any questions that I could help answer, but that's what we focus on mainly.
You technical people will probably be much more astute at questions. I guess what I'm hearing from you is we should be looking into virtual desktops like Google.
That's where a lot of companies and organizations are going at a pretty quick pace, and they're pretty reasonable pricing. But
okay.
but there is a price, obviously.
But there's more security.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
right now everything is co-located here in the town, so you have more control over it, but you also are more vulnerable to
Okay.
security, leaks or obviously vulnerabilities.
So we literally have a backup in the building.
Yeah, there's redundant backups. So
Redundant.
from a
Okay, that was
backup
my
point of
question.
view, we're pretty. I would say we're fair, but
Okay.
still, the companies that offer these products, I mean, put a lot of resources and research and design into these aspects. So they're experts at it.
And again, other people may know these answers, but I don't. I guess any clarification, you mentioned we pay about $100,000 a year for various licenses and such.
Yeah.
Would that offset if we went to a virtual? Do you not need those licenses as much?
Well,
it sounded like that would be a trade-off.
Well, there's a lot of various software being used, such as databases, Windows, mail servers. So some of those would remain, but I mean, it's more than just the license costs. It's just the just general maintenance of backups. I mean, all that would basically go away. Having to buy, you know, backup materials and just the effort to do the backups and storage, and just worrying, always having to protect the network.
Okay, gotcha.
If those were hosted somewhere else, then it wouldn't be a problem.
That'd be
which
saving and
yeah,
spending.
right.
Did you?
I was
Go
just
ahead,
thinking
Tom.
that it would be nice maybe to have the technology committee have that conversation and give us an idea. Did Chuck goes to all your meetings, I presume?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they could, you know, go through those ideas and come up with some comparisons, because it's something I don't know much about it, but I'd be interested in it.
Did you want to say something, Eileen?
Yeah, how about if I don't pretend to be any expert in technology, believe it or not, but I
Really?
even, well,
Really?
you know,
I would believe it.
one of my
Majors.
one of my majors is computer science.
Of course, that was back in the
1920s.
Joss days.
But anyway, so I would be happy to attend a meeting with your technology committee and Chuck,
Yeah.
and we could kind of talk about things. We could talk about money. We can talk about all the various things that concern you,
Yeah.
and kind of put together the two points of view. And
Right. I
and
mean, there's a
look
lot
at
of
it.
potential solutions that cost, you know, where the cost is all over the place. I mean, some are pretty reasonable and some are very expensive, but, you know, so it's more than just money. A lot of it's just the effort to, you know, whenever there's a software
Change.
upgrade, say for Microsoft Office or
Right.
Windows, upgrading everyone's computer is a huge effort, and some software is not compatible that, you know, that some employees may need. So you've got to think about that when a product like this. So it may not be a perfect solution, but it doesn't mean we have to do it all at once either.
Right.
You can do it in piecemeal. So I guess as a longer term view, this would probably be the way to go, especially with network speeds getting higher and higher, where, you know, they can handle this type of traffic, and just security. I mean, you know, maintaining a secure environment costs a lot of money and takes very talented people to do that. So it's hard for a town, you know, that of our size to really put the resources into something like that when there's companies out there that really do this every day. So it's definitely a discussion.
Dan? I'm sorry, did you have something else?
Would you like me to come?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Whoever, anyone.
All right, whoever.
We'll leave it between you two to make
Okay.
arrangements.
Okay.
Dan, go
It's
ahead.
kind of it's a similar, a good problem to have, but the Economic Development Committee, unless we give them a charge to do, sometimes there's a lot of talent wasted because they're waiting for direction from us. So I think we just found the topic of the night to give direction to and kind of give them a charge to give us a presentation, whether it's 6 months from now or whenever they feel they can give us, come back with some real, numbers on costs and stuff like that.
Right. I agree.
Anybody else? Tom?
So, thanks, Dustin, but we've talked about this several times in the Technology Committee, and one of the things that you mentioned, but maybe didn't catch people's ears as well as it should, is the cost of retraining people to use this service versus what they're used to right now on their laptops. And I think that's been one of the things that's been holding us back from a strong movement forward, even though the cost per seat at an outside service is less than the license cost for Microsoft Office or Windows or something like that. The cost for training, at least initially, an upfront cost, is substantial in throughput. And,
Specifically to what software? I mean,
well, I mean, just training them to use that external service
Oh,
instead of
right.
their laptops the way they're used to using them now. I mean, there's going to be a fundamental amount of effort that has to go through, or at least that's what I understood from Chuck, as he was concerned about that.
well,
But-
there's different, some are physical appliances that look like a computer. They're very small, and it's almost like a remote desktop. I don't know if
Yeah.
any of you are familiar with that, but it's just connecting to a computer, and once you're connected, it feels like you're on the computer that you used to be on. So, but there's also software programs that simulate that. I agree there will be training involved, but I mean, looking at the whole, our whole technology picture, it's hard not to keep going back to that. And I know that's why we discuss it at length a lot, because there's a lot of pros and cons currently for
Okay.
our situation.
Cool, thank you.
As I was retiring, they were switching over to Google. And it was like, okay, good time to leave. But you're right, there is a certain amount of, it's more trepidation than anything, but it's, once you start using it, like anything else,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, it's a big change too, right?
It's not in terms of functioning, it's, I mean, if I were to do a document, it's the same way.
Yep.
It's just a matter of where you save it to and probably accessing it.
Well, really, you wouldn't even notice. I
Okay.
mean, I've actually worked for a couple companies that it was new to me at one point. I'm like, oh, I was worried about the network and whether it was going to be performant. So I had my worries, but after a couple weeks, I almost didn't notice, because once you basically connect, it's like you're on a
It's the same.
desktop. I mean, there is no visible difference between the two, but. So yeah, so I mean, but you still have to migrate their current system to that,
over
and
to it.
depending on what versions of software they're currently using, I don't know what kind of effort that would be, because I would assume they could be fairly old. So, but that would be more of a research thing. Just basically get what is everyone using, what type of software, get that kind of intelligence, and then figure
Make a
out if this
decision.
is a product that they could use.
Bill, did you have a question?
It was just more of a comment that, in my place of employment, I use Microsoft Office, but at home, I use Google. And I think, and I'm not saying that this applies for everybody, but I would suggest that it's possible that we have employees in town that are used to working with one particular set of systems at work, and then at home, they use something entirely different, so that making the transition over to Google, there might be some training that's needed, but it might not be overly
As ominous, yeah.
as ominous or taxing for the employee to pick up using Google if they're already using Google for some of their home stuff, whether it be Google Docs, Google Media, Google Mail, so.
Well, there's also, I mean, that's one way to go in terms of the Office suite. There's a lot of products out there that have the word processor, the mail, spreadsheets. The virtual desktops, there's hosted solutions, meaning you connect to a service that's located somewhere else, whether it's in the Northeast or anywhere in the United States. But there's also solutions where you can host these virtual machines locally. You can have a server here, and then each employee would have an appliance that would connect to it. But it would feel like a computer. You'd have your keyboard and your monitor, but really the actual software and the running of the operating system would exist on the server. It's hard to explain, but
Computer.
but you really, as a user, you wouldn't really notice a difference. You'd still use the same programs you've always used. It's not running on a computer that you're sitting right next to, and that basically you no longer have to worry about buying new computers or upgrading them. Everything, all the maintenance is done by the technical professional on
Gotcha.
that one server. So,
Gotcha. So upgrading over time would be focused on the network, not so much on the individual computers.
correct, and just server maintenance. But
Gotcha.
that's 200 machines. You won't have to upgrade every couple
Which
of
has
years.
to be part of the analysis.
Right.
Yeah. Any other questions? Well, I guess as Dan says, you have your charge, so that's great.
Yep. Yeah, I will email you. I should be setting up another meeting in the next couple of weeks, so I can send you an email. Great.
Excellent. Thank you very much,
Justin,
Dustin.
thank you.
And I'm going to move ahead. New business number 2, I'm going to move without objection. The committee appointment to this technology committee. Town council to consider appointing the following individual to a committee, which is Paul Mondo for the technology committee. And Dustin and I interviewed him, and he had like 4 pages of experience. And he and Dustin had this conversation. I only understood 2% of it, and back and forth. And so I knew what he was going to talk about. I encouraged him to bring it before. I knew he was coming up soon. So I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the town council appoint Paul Mondu to the Technology Committee pursuant to Charter Article 4-8.
Bill Boyd, motion, second by, oh, Finley already did.
Oh.
Finley Rothaus, he said it very quietly, though. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, 600. Now, Paul, if you would come up to,
You sworn out?
be sworn in.
Oh, yeah.
Last minute, you got any more time to back out now.
There's so much I wanted to say, but I didn't say on that, on what he was presenting.
So what you want to do is go, say that out loud. And then we'll do the signatures later.
Right. I, Paul Mondo, do solemnly swear and sincerely swear that I will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent of me as a full member of the Technology Committee, according to the best of my abilities, agreeable to the rules and regulations of this Constitution and laws of the state of New Hampshire, so help me God. Thank you. Huh? Have to sign it.
I was there and we felt kind of silly because these two were like kids. They were just all excited and I'm going, oh, yeah.
Paul had mentioned he just wanted to make a quick comment as a follow-up to Dustin's.
I've had 35 plus years in technology, and I have a computer science degree also, right? I work for Lockheed Martin. A newer one, yeah. Well, it's all over these years, right? I work for Lockheed Martin at the corporation level. I started at Sanders, right? But I've been with Lockheed for, it'll be 35 years this next year. So on what was mentioned tonight, I can tell you my group, and I'm the chief engineer, at Lockheed, we're going all virtual. The same as what was brought up now. We're going to cloud computer and virtual servers. So all of our domain controllers, and we have thousands of them throughout the world, they're going to virtual servers, so we don't have to worry about individual machines and all of that. And what I heard is that you have like 200 servers and things here. That could be reduced, all right? And I truly believe that because that's part of what I do at Lockheed. We reduce assets and we train people and we bring all of these things in. Again, it wasn't bad for our people, and we have 250,000 employees, right? So all over the world. Training them is not an issue, as it was mentioned. You know, some use Google Apps and other apps at home, very similar. There's also Word products out there. There's Word 365 and things like that are out there that could reduce some costs, and you still have the Word, you know, the Office suites and things like that. So there's a lot of things, and the biggest benefit that we have at Lockheed, and I think what's going to benefit you, is what was already mentioned, is your backup and your security. Because that is always a problem with any organization. And if you can eliminate some of that need, it's going to save you a lot. And some of this virtualization will save you a lot.
Excellent.
And that's why I kind of asked to be on this committee. Okay. Yeah.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Sir, you realize it doesn't pay anything, right? Yeah, we know. Okay, just in case somebody told you something else, just to get you in.
Thank you. Okay, appointment number 2. Nashua Regional Planning Commission, NRPC Statement of Strategy, 2016 to 2020, submitted by NRPC Executive Director Tim Roach. And I apologize, but thank you very much for allowing me to move that one item ahead.
Not a problem at all.
Town Council received informational update on the NRPC Statement of Strategy. Good to see you.
Good to see you all. Thanks for having me. Councilor Boyd was at our commission meeting. He's serving as the council's rep to our commission, and he's been doing exactly what I wanted him to do, which is communicate with you all and have me come in and talk about what we're up to. And one item in particular we talked about in September at our quarterly meeting was our strategic planning process that's been going on for about a year, and we're at the end of it now. So just thought I'd give you a quick overview of that and talk about a few of the potential outcomes that might come out of it. So again, we started about a year ago with an all-day retreat where we brought in as many of our commissioners in as we could get to join us and talk about where we want to see the organization go. First, has everyone seen a copy of the strategic statement? No? Let me just give you these anyway. Finley, I heard you were tired, so this will help.
No.
It's a good read. So yeah, we started about a year ago at with that all-day retreat. I think Karen Elmer was there from Merrimack. I don't think Councilor Boyd was on the commission at that point, but and from there we heard from all the communities about what was important to them, what they wanted to see as services from the commission, and where they thought we should go. And then we took that information and brought it in-house. Had a number of internal meetings with the staff, did some strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats type of the SWOT analyses. Around the same time, I was going around to all of the towns as a sort of new director, and I think I came through here at one point in that year and talked a little bit with each of the communities about what we wanted to try to accomplish. From there, our executive committee took over, and we continued the internal discussions, working with the staff and the executive board, and completed yet another SWOT analysis to sort of hone in on what we really wanted to focus on. And really from there, worked with the other regional planning commissions to see if we were in line with them and see if there was any opportunity for some collaboration, including, with both the staff and the directors of the other regional planning commissions. So we sort of came up with this very simple driving principle for the whole process, which is make sure we provide excellent service and meet the diverse needs of our member communities. And for that sort of came out of the question of why does the staff come to work? Why does Bill come to the quarterly meetings and Karen Elmer and the other commissioners and not all volunteer to take your time? And that's really it. We want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the region. So if we're keeping that in mind, the outcome that we want to have is to make sure that everybody understands NRPC's role, what we do, why the programs are valuable, and how we can support the community needs. To get to that key outcome, we had 3 requirements that came out of this whole process. One was make sure that we have sustainable funding, as diverse as possible, to meet the needs of the communities and what you're looking for. And for me, this is more than just finding money to feed the machine. This is making sure that the grants that we search for are in line with what the communities want to accomplish. And one of the ideas that came out of this was that we have in our office a virtual whiteboard. It's a real whiteboard, actually, at this point. I'm just a technology guy, actually. But just to keep track of what we're hearing from the towns and make sure that, when we see grant opportunities that might help Merrimack or Mason or anyone else, that we're able to try and pursue those and they don't just slip through the cracks. So that's that's really what I think about when we're trying to meet your needs. The other critical requirement is to make sure that our staff is empowered to act on your behalf, that they're up to speed and fully trained, and we're keeping them on the edge of technology as well. And then that third requirement was communication, as I mentioned, and that was really my theme when I went around last fall, is to make sure that the commissioners are talking to the boards and the elected officials and the planning boards, and make sure that we have two-way communication, because without that, what ends up happening, and it's happened here, it's happened in a lot of towns, is it comes to budget season. What does NRPC do again? And I want to avoid that. I want to make sure that there's that communication, that we're meeting your needs, and if we're not, I know about it sooner than later. So some of the outcomes, I just sort of narrowed down a small list here, and really there was this idea of improving our transportation planning program, and this first one that's on here I think is of interest to everybody, and that's it's called Transportation Management Area Programming Authority, and I'll get into that a little bit more. I think, Councilor Boyd, I think you wanted to talk about that a bit. Economic development was a recurring theme. We heard that from when we first met in last November all the way through the process, and we're working on that right now to try and build our capacity as a staff and train some staff to provide those services, so that we'll expand our programs from transportation, land use, environmental, to include an economic development program. And it's a matter of finding that seed money now to strengthen our ability there. So, and the rest of it is really, a lot about energy with the pipeline, and that got expanded out beyond just, energy sources, but efficiency and looking at renewables. Making sure, again, people understand who we are, what we do, and making sure our staff and technology are up to speed. So that's really a 30,000-foot view of what's in that document that I gave you. And the details in there tell you a lot about what NRPC is, so I hope if you have a chance to look through it, you do. It gives a pretty good synopsis of what we do. So I can open it up to questions now, and then I think that'll lead to some of the other things that I think we wanted to talk about. So,
First of all, I'd like to make the statement that I think NRPC is valued by this town. I know the planning board uses you a lot, your resources, and I know we used a lot of your resources during the pipeline issue. Quick response, went above and beyond many of our requests. I know we're still getting updated maps now. So in my experience on the council of Lubec Selectmen, I think it sounds like you've done a really good job, because I see it expanding in terms of its capacity, or at least its response to the needs of the community. So kudos to you or the team, whatever it is, because I do see a difference.
it's the team.
Personally. And I have no hesitation on the funds we spent in terms of membership, because I think we do reap a lot of benefits. So I just wanted to make that statement ahead. But I'll open it up. Bill, and then Finley.
Well, I may be jumping ahead, Tim, but one of the things that I have... Thank you. Sorry.
That's all right.
I thought my voice was good enough. Back when I brought this to the council's attention, one of the things that piqued my interest, which was why I asked him here, was the idea of the surface transportation program funds and the transportation alternative funds, and how that was going to impact Merrimack in terms of our ability to do our own planning in terms of as it relates to some of the matching grant funds that we get from the state. Now, I do know that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, we don't have to, the state grant funding program is something separate and is not part of this process, this particular opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I can get into that if you like, just to...
That, to me, is, there's a lot of things here that I think the council's going to benefit from hearing from, but, my takeaway that month ago that I've communicated to the council is that transportation piece, I think, is integral in terms of how Merrimack is going to view their future with the NRPC. If you could talk about that, that'd be great.
I was planning to. I figured you'd ask, so I...
Okay, thank you.
So I'll start with that, because that's really it's a complicated topic, but it's an important one, as Councilor Boyd suggested. So we've been known for a long time for our transportation planning role, and in that role we're called a Metropolitan Planning Organization. It's a federal designation under the Federal Transportation Planning Rules. In 2010, in the 2010 census, we became a large MPO. So our population for the region, for the urbanized area in the census went over the 200,000 threshold. And with that, that gives us some additional responsibilities and some
Sorry.
people. Sorry. And I can even throw up another slide here for you while I'm talking. So when we went over that threshold, we got some additional responsibilities. And I will just go to this. We'll get into this a little bit, but one of those responsibilities that was sort of brought onto us from the Federal Highway Administration was to have the authority to program projects into the 4-year transportation improvement program. And that's what I have up on the screen now, is just sort of, this is the plan that we're being asked to make sure that our priorities are included in. And if you've been around the state for a while, you're familiar with the 10-year plan. Yeah, and this is, I can show you how this all fits together up on the screen if you're watching at home or here. So we have this thing called the Metropolitan Transportation Plan that looks out 20 years. That's sort of the source of all the long-term projects that we see as needs in the region. And we use that to sort of feed the state's 10-year plan process. The 10-year plan sort of fits into that. So if you take the first half of that long-range plan, it fits in. That's where the 10-year plan projects from our region come from. And that's a state law. The 10-year plan is a state requirement, and those are the projects that the state intends to move forward with in the next 10 years. Typically what we do is every couple of years, we'd work with the DOT and we'd give them projects to program into that 10-year plan. And usually if we get a couple projects in there, they're out there in years 8, 9, or 10. What this programming authority does is it shifts the sort of the ability for us as a region to say, we want to put these projects in the first 4 years of that 10-year plan or the transportation improvement program. So it gives more certainty to the projects that we put forward as a region. And that's important. Now, a couple of things I want to clarify, also for you, Councilor Boyd. When we talked about this back in September, I got the impression that people think we have a checkbook to do this. We don't. While we have authority to work with the DOT in consultation with the DOT, the legislature is still going to be involved in the 10-year plan. We don't actually have the money in-house or any responsibility for the money. That stays with the DOT and the legislature. But what happens is the region is empowered by Federal Highway Administration to make these recommendations. If the recommendations weren't accepted by the DOT and we couldn't reach a negotiation, in theory, the Federal Highway Administration could say, no, we're going to cut off funding until you work this out. So it gives the region a little bit more clout and ability to get projects into this process. And that's a good thing for everybody. That gives you reason to come to the table at NRPC, and I think that may be what you're getting at.
Yeah, because and I appreciate the clarity, because at the last meeting, I was really under the impression that there was going to be a fiduciary responsibility that was going to be incumbent not on the NRPC, but there was this authority which was going to be a consortium of towns that were in that MPO configuration. I was functioning under that premise. Was I wrong to think?
Well, yeah, to the extent that we don't have control over the money, that we don't have the money in our financials, that's not the case.
Okay.
But so it's an important point. I'm glad we got the chance to talk about that and clarify that.
But you do have more of a voice than you do now.
It gives us much more of a voice, and the real benefit is that if that voice isn't listened to, then the feds would step in potentially and say, no, you need to do this.
And if you're concurrent with what the state, it validates it for the federal.
Yeah, and we're in the process right now of the DOT is working with us. They're aware that we all have to cooperate and do this, so it's working out. The other piece I wanted to talk about is that the geography for this whole thing changes a little bit. The urbanized area from the census encompasses part of NRPC, And part of the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission is on this map here. It shows that sort of darker green, irregular shaped polygon shows the area that we're talking about for the programming of these projects, and that includes a large chunk of Merrimack, good chunk of overall the NRPC region, but it also includes Londonderry, Derry, and Wyndham. So part of this process, we have to bring together representatives from all of these communities to work cooperatively in deciding what are the priorities across this combined region. So there's a challenge there, and there's a lot of work to be done in getting everyone to understand this process. So, and then the other aspect of it is the roads that are eligible, and they are roads that are not part of the national highway system. I don't want to get into the details of this road or that road tonight. It's early for that, but good chunk of you can see just from this map, a good chunk of the major routes in Merrimack are eligible for the projects here. So I think that's important to know, but again, the details are to be worked out between us and the DOT. But I think this is something that a lot of other parts of the country already do, and I think it's important, and it will be beneficial to our region, and really gets the community's voices heard in that 10-year plan process in a way that they really haven't before. So
Dan?
that's.
Go right ahead.
I, for one, didn't appreciate you, not personally, but the group, 6 years ago when I started. I wasn't seeing the benefits in things, so I wanted to just recognize that over the years I have had a change of heart, seeing what you guys at your whole organization, just for the sheer information. Sometimes I think people forget, I do, when you Google something and the information's there and you get the map, but you don't know who put it there to be on Google in the first place. So many times I'm getting a better understanding for that. So I want to make that first comment. The second comment was, in the report, it's just something that struck me, under the weaknesses of your group. Should the commission remain a neutral, fact-finding body versus becoming an outspoken advocate for member community interests? I find that really is probably the hardest thing to find out what is your future, which leads me to the question, does the state give you funds? I know you get funds from every community that's in the region, but does Concord, through the legislative process, is there anything there?
We get $11,000 from the Office of Energy and Planning.
And that's the only agency in Concord that you have?
Unless we go after a specific grant through Department of Environmental Services.
Okay.
But those are often federal funds that are funneled through the state agencies.
Yeah.
But as far as state money goes, $11,000 from OEP.
And then what about federal funds?
That varies. The federal highway through the DOT funds about 80% of our existence right now.
Okay, all right.
And then, again, we pick things up through either DES or FEMA or Homeland Security, things like that.
Okay. And then my last question, my biggest one is really, which I think is probably the biggest game changer, the biggest project that we could do with outside of roads is trains, because it's obviously a hot political topic.
Yeah.
So how does your group, or how do you foresee your group as addressing the subject of commuter rails at the same time when it is so political, when it's based on getting funding, getting the 400-member House to, are you going to spend $300,000 on the seed money and the whole complex? I mean, we could talk about an hour about trains, but how do you view the NRPC's role on probably the biggest game changer to Southern New Hampshire, whether there is or is there not commuter rail?
Yeah, we're kind
Sorry
of,
for the mouthful.
That's all right. We're kind of treating this like the pipeline, in a way. We try to make sure that the communities understand the value and the benefits of a complete multimodal, robust transportation system. We haven't, as a group, and again, I'll take this opportunity to say it's not me or the staff that speaks for the NRPC, but the folks that come to the table. And the folks that come to the table have not taken a formal position on the train yet, because they were hoping for that next phase of the study to be funded so that everybody knew exactly how much it would cost, what it would cost to operate, what the ridership would be, and that piece that the legislature decided not to move forward with in the last session.
So I can interrupt with a comment?
Go ahead.
It's kind of a free-flowing conversation, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
right, go
It's interesting that you say that, because in some ways I would sure you would want the communities to give you some input. You would want this council, you would want the Bedford Council, you'd want the Nashville Council to let you know whether they're pro-train or not train. And at the same time, your feedback would be, well, we don't have all the information yet. We couldn't give you a good recommendation unless we knew the real cost benefits,
Yeah.
whether they're real, is it going to be subsidized?
Right.
All those issues that come together. So I find it interesting that we're at this crossroads.
We really needed that next phase to make the decision, and that's, again, it's a decision of whether to spend the money or not, and they went against for this session, so we'll see, I guess.
Good questions, Tom?
Just to try to clarify, I think I understood, but you're saying the people that would have helped you to drive forward on that are the commissioners, the people that come to the table, or are you looking for direct input from the different town councils to give you guidance? For things like commuter rail and stuff like that?
Yeah, what I'm saying is it's ultimately if a position statement came out of the NRPC in any way, it would be the people that come to the table.
So
the
those people
commissioners.
are the commissioners?
Yes.
Which
and
we have 4
right,
representatives.
and I would hope they would be informed by the council
By the council.
and
So
the selectmen.
There's an indirect link there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was missing that. Okay.
Right, so yeah, so
Which
that's
Tom is-
that's where that communication piece comes in, where if the commissioners are talking to the elected bodies, then the commissioners are better positioned to speak to the issues as a region. So, any other questions on
Any other
transportation?
questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
We appreciate you coming and updating us and clarifying.
Good, I'm glad it worked out.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you,
All
Tim,
right, thanks.
appreciate it. See you in
Next,
December?
What's that?
See you in December? Okay.
Next on the agenda, Merrimack Public Library update, submitted by Board of Trustees Chair Richard Barnes, newly appointed or elected, however it is, and Library Director Yvette Kauser. The Town Council will be presented with an update of the year's past activities.
Give Yvette a minute to hand out.
Good evening. Not yet. Oh, I remember getting this. This is really, in fact, I think I made a comment to somebody, yeah.
You have another one.
It's really good.
Give it away.
So go right ahead.
Hey, so good evening. For those watching at home that, I know everybody in the council knows me, but for those watching at home that don't know me, I'm Rick Barnes. I'm the chair for the library trustees. And to my right is Yvette Kauser, the director for the Merrimack Library. We'd like to just share an annual update on the Board of Trustees and the library. We've compiled a list we're going to go through, and if you have any questions on any of the topics, feel free to jump in and interrupt and ask. So we'll start with Yvette going over just a highlight of our personnel.
Yeah, so thank you for letting us be here today. It's always nice to see you. So we had actually a lot of turnover this year in the staff. I'm not sure what I can attribute that to. You know, we had some additional tasks we were asking staff to do, some additional training, an increase in different kinds of technology and services that we're doing. So there was a lot of turnover in the circulation department and in youth services in terms of our part-time staff. We had turnover in maintenance, both the maintenance aide, the person who cleans the library, and the custodial aide, the custodial aide who cleans the library and the maintenance aide who does kind of repairs. They both resigned, and we've rehired a maintenance position, someone in that position, and then we've posted the custodial aide. Right now it's open. I did have 2 full-time people leave. Department heads. Our head of technical services left for an equivalent job at the Nesmith Library in Windham after working in Merrimack for 18 years. And I had my head of youth services leave. Her last day was yesterday. And she left for an equivalent job down in Rhode Island. So both of these jobs are equivalent positions for higher pay. Just want to put that out there. Because it's something that we want to watch and make sure that we're being competitive. So we did fill the tech services head. We have someone who's in place, and then the youth services is posted now. I had a summer intern in the children's room over the summer. She was wonderful, worked great. It was a great opportunity on both sides. I had a summer intern in my secretary position. She was a student, library student, so she had a nice opportunity to learn some things that you don't normally learn in library school when you're in the administrative work. And then I have a regular secretary that I hired when the summer was over. We've had a nice opportunity with the State Library and our professional organization called the New Hampshire Library Association with something called the Paralibrarian section. For the NHLA, the New Hampshire Library Association, there are sections for each type of work. So there's a children's section and an adult section and so on. They created recently a paralibrarian section, so that would be the non-professional staff who work alongside the professional librarians. And there's an opportunity for staff to attend workshops and classes and earn credits towards a certification process. And there are 4 levels of certification. So we have several of our staff who are actually taking that opportunity to learn and improve their skills. So that's actually quite nice. I'm actually on that committee as an education chair to do it. It was an opportunity I had when I worked in Indiana before I got my library degree. So I was really enthusiastic to see that it had come back to New Hampshire, because they used to have this about 16 years ago, and then it, for some reason, they had ended that program, but now it's back. I went to the American Library Association conference, which was in June, and that was in Florida, so my trustees allowed me to go. It was wonderful.
Too
It's
bad
a
it
conference.
wasn't February.
You know, it was very hot. This year, they're doing the winter one in Georgia, and then they're gonna, so that's a little bit better. I will not be attending that one. But it was really a wonderful opportunity because you have, libraries, not just from the United States, but it's really from the international libraries. So you really see some very, very different kinds of services going on, and it was wonderful. It was really, really a great opportunity. And I'm serving on the board of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm on the board of directors here in Merrimack, so that's just another thing that I'm trying to make some more connections in our business community, and that's really a fantastic chamber we have. It's a great honor to be working alongside professionals in lots of different areas. As you know the chamber very well. But it's wonderful. I think there's kind of an element for me, again, about learning things that you don't get to learn in library school, and just being around other professionals is wonderful. And I did hand out the Chamber of Commerce Merrimack Visitors. It used to be called the Visitor's Guide, but now it's Merrimack at a Glance, where coincidentally we were featured. Coincidentally, we were featured in the magazine. And we're starting, our big spread is starting on page 18, and it goes over to page 20, where they're featuring our 3D printer, which Rick will talk a little bit about. But that was locally made, but it was really nice that we got to be featured in that. So.
Great. Then we also have some updates on the building itself. Just real briefly, one of the things we are looking to do in the building that we've already started implementing, we're looking to improve the security both for the staff and the patrons. It's security, so we're not going to get into the details, but if anybody is curious of what the details are, you can stop at the library and Yvette can go through it with you guys.
I'll give you the tour.
Yeah, she'll give you the tour. You can get into the details of all the other...
Can you back up just a minute? Are you talking about physical security or internet or computer security, or what kind of security?
Physical building security.
Okay.
Like just one example, the staff areas now have locking doors, so children and others can't wander into where the staff go.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So if you've been in the library in the past year, which I hope you have been, you'll notice that we changed a lot of things. We moved some stuff around. We did move, the picture books used to be in bins, and we got rid of everything except for maybe one or two bins. But everything else is shelving that we are repurposing from the reference area. A lot of our reference collection has really moved from print to electronic. A great example is our technical manuals, computer manuals. That's outdated immediately. So we really whittled that collection down because a lot of it is available through some databases that we subscribe to. So that freed up a lot of shelf space. A lot of our reference materials also, we decided to change the status of these items so that they could circulate. So people could take them home and check them out for our normal checkout period. So we were able to repurpose these bookcases downstairs to shelve the picture books. They're low shelves, so it really creates this nice sight line across the room. It's just very, very attractive. So we did that. We have tomorrow, there's a shelving that's being installed along the wall when you enter. It's going to be all of our media. So the DVDs used to be on regular bookcases, but they're going to be on another kind of bookcase that's going to accommodate them better. So that will be a nice improvement. We did have a flood over the summer, and Paul was absolutely wonderful in helping us navigate the insurance claim. So thank you, Paul. We had a whole section of shelving that was damaged because of the water. So that shelving is going to be installed tomorrow. We finally had that. That's ready. So we can get our biography collection out of boxes and back into circulation. We had to remove everything and just keep it out of circulation. We've got a fresh coat of paint in the room, which is nice. The benefit of having shelves removed from a wall because of a flood is that we get to paint. So it's very nice now. We also moved some stuff around on the main floor. Part of this was to be able to accommodate our 3D printer, and then we were able to move the circulation desk from the wall where it has always been to more of a central location in the middle of the room. Again, it provides better sight lines for the staff to be able to see in different areas. And it really opened up the floor space that's on the tile, which is now more of comfortable seating. What we'd like to do is to be able to have classes about the 3D printer, but we didn't have any seating. So to move the circulation desk to a different location and have the seating available around the printer is something that we're able to do. We have circulating laptops. They can circulate in the building. So if we're going to have a class, we can have everyone sit at laptops, or they bring in their own devices and then design and modify and then start printing things. We've done some of that on a smaller scale with our teen groups, but haven't really exploded with it with our adult groups. But we're gonna be able to do that very soon. Let's see. We're working on moving the reference computers, the patron computers that are closer to the window. They're kind of in an arrangement that rings the reference desk. This doesn't allow for a lot of privacy when I have a patron at the reference desk and they're having a reference interview with me, because everyone who's sitting at a computer can conceivably listen to what's going on. So we're going to move the reference desk away from that ring and just swing the computers so they're more like a block of just this little unit together. It won't be very disruptive, but then it'll allow for this reference interview to happen separately. And that should be happening in the next couple of weeks. What else?
There's also now, where the main desk used to be now is a seating area.
Right.
Yeah.
On the tile.
Yeah, on the tile, which, for those who haven't seen it, you really should stop in and see it,
It's
because
very
it's really
different,
nice.
huh?
Yeah, it's,
Oh, it's really different, yeah.
Because
But-
you're right, that's been there. The reference has been there forever.
but the thing
I
I
have not
personally
seen it,
like
I'm just
best
imagining.
about that move is now the shelving area that used to be behind the desk
Right.
is open, so the on-holds, you can actually, if there's a line, you can actually get your on-hold material, and there's a self-checkout computer, so you can check yourself out right there without having to wait for, a line at the front desk.
Yeah, this was, to do a self-hold, that was something that our consortium libraries, several of our consortium libraries already have this service. So if you went to Bedford, you were used to doing that, but, Merrimack hadn't caught up yet. We had to do all these different things to make the space so that it could happen. But, and then you have to figure out, how do you maintain someone's privacy when I'm going to retrieve my book? So we had to kind of consult with the libraries that are doing the self-hold so that we could come up with a system so that our patrons would be still, protected, and you just kind of go get your book. And there's, a certain number of letters of your last name, the last numbers of your library card, and you can check it out. It's very convenient. It's really nice.
All right, and then moving on to programs, I'll start with the turkey shoot, which
Sure.
we already covered. It's coming up Friday, November 18th. I want to point out for anybody listening at home, this is the first year we're trying it on a Friday instead of the Thursday before Thanksgiving. So a lot of people had kids and they have to work the next day, so we decided to move the event to a Friday so people didn't have to worry about how late it runs. And this year we are actually holding it at Wasserman Park instead of at the high school. So, just make note, it's the change of location. Now, the turkey shoot, for anybody who hasn't been to it before, it's a night where we raffle off turkey dinners. We have all sorts of gift baskets that have been donated by local businesses and patrons of the library. Some of them are already on display at the library where you first walk in. It's a big draw for the library every year, and it's also one of our big fundraising events, along with our book sales that we hold throughout the year. And I'll get into the technology separately, but the turkey shoot is very, and fundraising is very key for us because we're looking to do more with money fundraised and donated, so we don't have to, have any kind of impact on taxes. And, the 3D printer is a perfect example of that. We were able last year not only to cover the 3D printer, but also cover enough filament. So right now it's free for the indefinite future because we've already covered so much filament. So we have patrons that have been coming in and printing cell phone holders. And one of the cool things they had printed was a tick remover. There's actually somebody that's actually printing a 3D printer. So so it's always fun, and I've yet to go in the library where people aren't standing around looking at the stuff being printed. So I'll let Yvette get into more of the other programs that we have going.
Yeah, just to go back to the turkey shoot and the 3D printer, we raised over $5,000 at that fundraiser, and so we were able to buy the 3D printer, the cabinet that was custom built for us by the 3D printer engineer, and other makerspace objects like 3D pens and Ozobots and other things that I probably can't remember right now. But it was really, really fantastic. Really, really cool. So yeah, and the turkey shoot. So it's going to be at the Wasserman Park Function Hall, which is kind of a nice segue into my next point, which is we're really having a lot of nice opportunities to partner with other town departments. Everyone here knows Matt. He's very easy to work with, fantastic. We partner with a lot of things through the summer with the concerts that we do over the summer with our summer reading challenge and the summer concert series. We usually partner with the kind of bookend, with the bookend concerts. Thanks. But to allow us to try this event at Wasserman Park, fantastic. So. He's also, last year they installed, the DPW installed a little free library that our Friends group purchased. It's at the playground right outside the function hall. He is willing to install another little free library in town. It's going to be at Twin Bridges. So our Friends group is going to purchase that, and then that will probably go up in the spring. So that's, for those of you who don't know what a little free library is, it's a little kind of a gigantic birdhouse where you tuck books in it. And, I initially stock it, and then you can go and see what's there and take something out. And if you have something at home, you just tuck it in. So it's kind of like a trade. I keep saying things are neat, but it's really, really neat. Let's see what else is going on. We're going to have our parking lot repaved. You guys know about that from the CIP, so that's going to be in the spring. I had Kyle and Tim walk through the parking lot with me. It was probably a couple months ago now, and just kind of, they were telling me what they were going to do, and we talked about the drains and things like that. So that's, we're going to be able to schedule that probably, April, May. So we have to schedule our programming so that we can have the parking lot shut down. And so it's nice that it's kind of far out, so we can really plan. Because there are days that I don't have a parking space, amazingly. You may know that our Hillstown Library Cooperative, we're part of a cooperative in the region, and many of the towns that were on that map just before are in our cooperative. Mason is one of them. So and Brookline and Hollis, but we were part of a group of libraries that won a National Endowment of the Arts Big Read Grant. We were reading The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck, which I had never read before, so I had a nice opportunity to read that. And did you just... You know what?
Heresy of that. It's a classic.
I'll tell you what. See, here's the thing. I confessed that. I'm not scared. I'm not scared. You know what? A librarian admitting I have not read a classic. I told it to my colleagues when they chose the book, and they all did the same thing you did. So I've had it. I've had it.
I broke down 2 years ago and read The Catcher in the Rye for the first time, and
I've read that before.
so there we go. We're even.
So you're even.
We're even.
I'm not a fan.
Of what?
Catcher.
Neither am I. I didn't get it.
I didn't either.
I didn't get it.
I didn't either.
I suggest you tell him all the books you have read.
No, we don't have that.
I read a lot of drama.
You want to get
okay?
home tonight?
Because I was a theater major, okay? So I read a lot of drama in high school. I was one of those kids.
So we get to call you Master Thespian as well?
Yes, because I have a master's, too.
Okay, giddy up.
So I read a lot of drama, and I don't know. But anyway, so I read it. I confess, I read it. I read the theatrical version because I didn't read it. There's a fantastic audio of The Grapes of Wrath because there was a stage adaptation. So that was my entry point because it was easy, because it was drama. And then I listened to the book. I did watch the movie because it was, and we did it at Cinemagic. The trustees rented Cinemagic, which I don't remember seeing any of you there. So next time when we do it again. But that was really fun because we saw it on the big screen, which was amazing. And then I listened to the book. So I haven't actually physically read The Grapes of Wrath, but I listened to it, which counts. We always say that counts. So now.
But I think the studious people, they probably would eyebrows.
Does the library maintain a collection of audiobooks?
They're not my friends then. I'm not
So
interested.
therefore,
We do.
it's fair.
We have a very large collection of audiobooks, and we also have downloadable audiobooks. So, we got you covered. But right now, we're doing a whole fall series. The Grapes of Wrath, the Steinbeck Fest continues. Because right now, for November, if you wanted to come to the book group, you can come to the book group. It's on I don't remember the date, but it's the third Wednesday. It's the third Wednesday of this month. We're going to read Steinbeck's
16th.
version. Thank you.
You
On
doing
the
up Mice and
16th
Men?
at 7, we're going to be discussing John Steinbeck's version of the King Arthur tales because he did a rewrite of that because he grew up loving King Arthur, which I didn't know, but I had to read all this background on Steinbeck. I know everything about him now. And then in December we're going to read The Red Pony, which I did read when I was a kid. And it was in my Norton Anthology of Fiction, which you probably remember, the Norton Anthology. Okay.
Yes, I do.
See?
I don't remember Red Pony, but Norton's Anthology, absolutely.
If you reread it, like I reread it, you would go, I totally read this story. Because it's like, oh.
Just as long as you don't make me read Paradise Lost, I think I'll be,
I read the middle book. I think I read the middle book of that. That's a tough one.
Yeah, it
That's
is.
a tough one.
We're getting into reminiscing. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
He started it.
He did.
Okay. And I went running, so I'm sorry. So yeah, we won this Big Read grant, and we had musical programs, we had painting classes, we had lectures on farming and religion of the 1930s. I had put up the scarecrows. There were 5 Jodes represented in our scarecrows. We had teen events that were, there are actually some graphic novels that are about the Dust Bowl, so we had our teens reading that, we had our children's book discussion about that. It was massive, so,
So
yes.
how much was that grant? Are you talking,
I never found out the exact amount.
but you've done all these projects based on having gotten that grant? Did
Yes.
you have to have some concept of how much you were spending, or?
No, we, okay, so we want a grant. I have not had the final meeting with the grant writer. And there were certain events, like there was a big kickoff at the LaBelle Winery with a band and a scholar, and that was paid for from the grant. So the little libraries, some of the individual libraries received funding if we requested it early enough, but really the money went towards the big events.
It was kind of like a share, I guess the best
Well,
way.
it was a
shared
shared,
between a bunch of
it was a
libraries.
regional
I know, but
thing,
it-
and
So it sounded like you came up with a lot of good programs, and as I've been
Yes.
reading your
Yeah.
newsletters, it sounds like you've been doing some wonderful things, and I was just curious, if we wanted to continue that kind of an effort, would we be talking $10,000 or $50,000?
that's a great question, and I don't know, but I'm going to find out, because I have to still submit my, my equivalent in terms of hours and what we spent on things.
Oh,
Food
okay.
isn't included, but, we gave small stipends to our speakers, but it was really neat. It was different, it was really different. What else? We were in the July 4th parade, as always. That was fun. And our library was a gym in Pokemon Go. If any of you were playing Pokemon Go, we were a gym. We're probably still a gym, even though Pokemon Go has kind of faded. Unless you're offended
No,
by
I
that.
didn't.
It's faded? Okay.
No, I'm not offended by that.
That's what the young people tell me. And we were able to do some outreach at the Merrimack Outlets. Our head of children's, I did it once. We went out and did story times on a couple of Saturdays out there.
Nice.
So that was really another outreach we did.
There's one additional
What?
program you don't have on here that's actually one of my favorites.
Okay.
November is NaNoWriMo,
Oh.
the National Novel Writing Month. So there's a whole series of events going on throughout the month at the library, and the challenge is for people to write a 50,000-word novel in 30 days. So you start November 1st, and you end November 30th, and then in December, the library hosts a Thank God It's Over party where the people who've completed something bring it in and read
Oh,
whatever they've written, and it's some fun stuff. I highly recommend people show up at that event because it's a lot of fun.
So you can tell that Rick is participating
Yes,
in
I am.
NaNoWriMo. I am also participating in NaNoWriMo, so.
Sixth time I'm trying it.
Sixth time.
Yep.
My daughter is as well.
I know.
She has many times.
I know.
All right.
I saw the note in your newsletter that said that throw away the editor or something like that for
Yeah.
NaNoWriMo. Just go ahead and write.
Write
Yeah.
fast. and
Don't sit there
furious.
and
Yep.
critique yourself. Just
No.
get
Got
it
it.
down on paper.
I was going to ask what kind of criteria there was.
Really, you have to think of this as a first draft.
Yeah.
And I think how the library ties in. This is a program. It's an international program. It was started in the 90s out in San Francisco. It was a group of friends who always wanted to write that book, but decided to challenge themselves to write, let's say 50,000 words. And it used to actually take place in the summer. But then they moved it to November. I don't know why they moved it to the month with Thanksgiving, but because there's so much stuff to do around Thanksgiving. But so it's really something that's grown. The NaNoWriMo organizers like to partner with libraries because libraries have books in them. Usually there are readers. A lot of times there are writers. It's a really nice marriage. What we do is we have a kickoff event in October. We just had ours last Saturday, I guess.
Yeah.
And we had a panel of 3 authors from Sisters in Crime New England. So they were talking about their writing process, their publishing process, giving tips. Several of them had done NaNoWriMo in past years. And it was just a really nice kind of informational support session. But it was great to have authors, in the library giving a talk about their process and their books. And then they had, a book signing, and people were able to purchase their books. But we host something called Write In, where you can just kind of bring your laptop or your notebook or whatever and get time away from home to have a quiet space to write, as quiet as the library is. And then we have our TJO party where it's an open mic and you can share a couple minutes worth of your book in progress.
a lot of fun, a lot of fun. And for parents, they can set shorter limits for kids who might not be able to hit 50,000 words, so they might give them like a 2,000 word. And so we had kids that have shown up and read theirs, and it's wonderful, absolutely wonderful event.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun, yeah.
All right, so moving on. Technology, we've got our 3D printer, which we've already discussed. I highly recommend everybody come in and take a look at it. And you can go online, and there's several sites that have free 3D objects that you can pick, and then you basically give the link of the object that you want to the library. They add you to the list, and when your turn comes up, they'll print it for you. And I've found, just from a nice Google search, there's several free 3D programs to draw your own objects. I don't think we've actually had anybody
Not yet.
submit anything they've actually designed on their own, but I'd love to see somebody come in and submit something they've created on their own. And then, do you want to mention that?
Yeah, we had purchased a new software to track summer reading hours. And so this was the first summer we implemented that. This is a local, relatively local company. I think they're kind of more in the Boston region. It's called Beanstack. So in the way we used to do summer reading is you pick up a paper log, you fill out, you color in how many shapes. If you've read, if you're a child, you've read 15 minutes. And then the adults, usually we had something like a bingo card, and you just mark off when you've checked out a museum pass or read a mystery or whatever. But Beanstack is very powerful software, and you're able to track your reading titles. You can track by minutes still, but it's not just for the summer. We're going to actually be doing a winter reading program so that we can, stay up on the software and really get the use out of it. But you just create an online account, and then you can, create for your children and link accounts. If teachers want to see it, I believe they can link to it as well, if there's that interest in the family, and then you just track. And it sets little kind of rewards, and you've earned this badge and that badge, and there's a little incentive. But it's much more accurate in terms of the staff side. It's more accurate tracking for the kind of stats we want to keep, because we partner with our Friends of the Library, and the Friends of the Library pledge to make a donation of a certain amount of money to a local organization based on how many hours the children read, if they meet the goal that the Friends set. And then just for staff time, when you come in and register to do the program, you don't have any long lines. You can register from home. It's so much easier. We did have people still want to use the paper log, which is fine, but it's good for, toddlers and babies, if you're reading to them, for elementary school children, for teenagers, for adults. So that was something that we're going to keep using. We're I think we're the only one in our region really trying it, but we like it.
Cool. Moving on to the update about the trustees themselves. We, as you all are aware, in the last election for the town, we had added the amendment to add alternates for the trustees. We are still looking for people who might be interested, hopefully looking to get one, ideally, serve as an alternate. So if anybody watching at home is interested in getting involved, we'd like to see somebody step up. Ideally, maybe if you've considered running for the trustees, but you don't want to run against somebody who's already on the board, or you don't know enough and you're not quite sure it's something you'd really want to do, this is a great way to actually come be part of the trustees, but you're not really committed. You serve a year, and then if you don't want to keep doing it, you can step down. Right. After that, we conducted a salary survey with Municipal Resources Incorporated, where we haven't reviewed the results yet as a board, the trustees, so I don't have too many details, but we compared our staff against libraries throughout the state, so we can see, especially with the retention policy we've had with the staff, we can see where we are underpaying, or if there's any positions we're overpaying, or any of that we can see all across the board. We'll be reviewing that in our next meeting, which is the 15th? Yes. Same meeting, we're also going to be reviewing our strategic plan for coming up. And so that's pretty much it for the trustees right now. So, if anybody has any questions for us, as we both had mentioned, if anybody would like to come and have a tour of the library and see some of the changes that we've been doing, you're all welcome to show up. And for anybody on the council or watching at home, if you want to go to the library website, you can join the email list and be alerted anytime there's an upcoming program or event going on at the library.
Excellent.
Any questions?
Finley?
But you did mention, it didn't stick in my memory. I think it was the Technical Services Department head.
Yep.
Where did they go to?
They went to Windham, the
Windham, yeah.
Nesmith Library in Windham. Yep. And this is the department that orders and catalogs. It's cataloging, catalogs the books. Is really a go-between for us with the consortium for all of our online catalog.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sounds like you've had a great year.
Have we?
Wow.
It's been ups and
Seems-
downs.
seems
For
very
me,
good,
it's
very
all a
good.
blur.
The flood wasn't a good thing.
Flood was not fun.
But you got your room painted, so.
Yeah, for anybody who's seen on
Active,
there
that's
was
the
a
right
video on
Yeah.
we posted on Facebook of the flood,
Yeah.
and you could actually see the water coming in
I
through the
think I
back
remember
stairs.
seeing that.
Yeah, that
It
wasn't
looked
good.
like a waterfall.
Right, it
really
was
did.
running right in, right?
Yeah, it's-
Oh,
yeah,
it was so
just-
bad.
Yeah, no.
And I toured the day after, and there were like ponds in the downstairs. I mean,
Had it
there's
ever been previously
areas
flooded?
that deep.
I understand it was, some years ago was the Mother's Day flood, which I was not in town for
Oh,
that.
yes,
But,
yes.
yeah, okay, so you guys.
Oh, yeah, we remember that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was literally like 2 to 3 inches deep in
Wow.
parts.
Oh, it was,
Yeah.
it was
really bad.
like ankle deep, more than ankle deep for the staff. But everyone moved really quickly, to move stuff out of the way and getting
Right.
books up really
Right.
quickly. We did not lose a lot of material,
Oh, good.
so
You need
we
a
lost
sump pump.
shelving. Well,
Been a big one today.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
any other questions? Bill and then Jackie?
Just a comment, several months ago, they actually had Blades the Bruin do
Yeah.
an event to promote reading. And they actually invited one of the Bruin and Ice Girls to read to the kids there. They had about maybe 30 kids and their parents there. They had snacks. Each kid got a swag bag with the read poster, Zdeno Chara, which I thought was pretty cool. But no, it was a well-attended event, so I think those types of things of what Yvette and her team are doing, I think is indicative of the type of changes that back several years ago when we had our issue with the budget with the predecessor to where we are today. I think it's a complete 180-degree turnaround to that. The diversity of the programming at the library is really second to none. So I wanted to
Thank you.
thank you and the trustees and your team for a lot of the hard work to keep things interesting at the library, to get readership getting in and getting out to participate in the different things. So anyway, that was my only comment. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Jackie?
Yes, I wanted to echo, actually what Bill just said. I don't know how there are hours in the day for you to do all this stuff. And I like to think that the lot of fun things, entertaining things, interesting things that are reading oriented. It sounds like such a no-brainer, but you don't waste your time on things that aren't really relevant and focused, it seems, which I like a lot. I was wondering, a little sense, a practical thing, the ice on the roof,
Yep.
you know how you have to go, is that fixable or?
Well, there's, I don't know what it's called, but there's a strip, like a guard, an ice guard.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Hey, there you go.
What is it?
Did I say ice guard? It's an ice guard. Yeah, there's one installed there. I mean, we'll see how it holds up this winter, because, we'll see.
Yeah. And I was wondering, the seismograph, how did you?
Seismograph?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yeah, how's that going along?
Well, I know there were some small earthquakes in New Hampshire, just like
Last
this
week.
week or last week,
Last week.
that were more like a 1 magnitude or 1.5 magnitude. Our seismograph is calibrated to pick up 6, and higher. So 6 magnitude and higher. So we pick up whatever is 6 and higher, and you know, if you're trained, like I am, to read, it's all continuing ed. If you're trained to read the readout, and you can actually clip it, you know, you can highlight a section of the waves and enlarge it, and you can see there's a certain pattern when it's an earthquake versus me walking into the room. You know, it's calibrated so it won't pick up me really walking into the room, and it doesn't pick up the traffic on the street. But yeah, we pick up everything. There's earthquakes that happen like practically every day that are a 6.0, and a lot of it's, you know, in that ring of fire, you know, the geographical area that's called the Ring of Fire.
Oh, yeah.
Out in the water.
Oh, so you pick up things like
Oh,
from
yeah.
California?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
pick up anything that's 6.0 and higher, and it just travels through. It travels through the earth, and it picks up whatever is happening in the ground in Merrimack. We also pick up when there's snow or a big rainstorm, because the trees move and the roots move, so it'll affect, and you'll
Yeah,
pick up a
very
different kind of
fascinating.
wave. Yeah, you can tell when there's a storm because it's a different kind of wave.
Wow.
A
Yeah,
lot
it's
of times,
really neat.
anytime there's a big earthquake in the news, she's been clipping it and posting the
Yeah.
picture onto Facebook, so the people who follow on Facebook can just see it. You know, it's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very neat.
You know,
And-
we've even had, you know, school districts from other towns come to
Come and
Merrimack,
see it.
because we are the only, are we still the only public?
We're still the, as far as I know, we're still the only public library
Yeah,
with the
the only
network.
public seismograph in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've actually had other towns come to us
Yeah.
to see our
Yeah,
seismograph.
they
We
bring
have a
their
lot
classes.
going on.
Yeah.
And my final question,
Yeah.
how many pages is 50,000 words?
I don't know.
Like 100.
Well, I guess it depends if you print it double space or how you print it. I've never actually
I-
printed any of
I-
the times
I-
I've succeeded.
I think it's
so-
over 100.
Over 100. Because I was thinking we could each write a chapter
Yeah,
and
there you
see
go.
how it hangs together.
You can start.
It'd be kind of like ad lib, only the whole.
Yeah, I've never had
Jackie
the
could
guts
be
to.
first, Bill could be second.
Yeah, I've never had the guts to submit anything that I've written, so I don't know yet.
That's impressive.
And the title will be Dan Commandeers a Tank to Take Over an Election.
I knew it was rigged. I knew it was rigged.
Yes.
Any other
That sounds
questions
like
or
a bestseller,
comments?
No.
Yes, Bill?
Just one final thought, Yvette, as we're going, just to dovetail off of Councilor Rothaus, as we go into budget season, if you think it would be helpful to do an analysis of competing staff positions as it relates to what you've just dealt with, so that we have an idea as to what's comparable
Yeah.
in other communities, I certainly would be willing to take a look at that,
Okay, yeah.
if
I
that's
mean,
not too much trouble.
We had, the wage study was delivered to us maybe a week and a half ago, so, and it's in 2 parts.
Okay.
So they really have not had a
Yeah,
chance
we
to.
haven't had a chance to discuss it as a board yet, and
No.
I'm still reading. It's 2 pretty thick books, so I'm still reading through. I haven't even read the whole thing yet, so I'm still reading it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
it cuts, everything cuts into the
Yeah,
book.
it cuts into my
the
writing
book.
time, yeah.
Well, I just to comment on that, my daughter, who has been doing part of that NaNoWriMo thing for years and years and years, comes down on Thursdays to spend time with my son. And she was counting on spending time on the bus from Manchester to Nashua to get in 1,000 words.
Yeah.
There you
And
go.
maybe a little bit of time at Starbucks too while she was waiting to get picked
Yeah.
up. So,
Well,
I mean, they
she-
find every moment they can.
She usually writes 100,000 words.
Yeah, well, she.
So
She's an
More than happy.
overachiever like her
she's
dad.
one of, oh yeah, she does.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah,
Thank
but
you,
she-
appreciate it.
So,
Okay, all set? Well, thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
the
Thanks.
information.
Thanks a lot, have a good weekend.
Thank you.
There's no public hearing. Any legislative updates? I don't see anyone. Town managers report. Eileen?
I do not have one.
Do not have one. No consent agenda, no old business. New business, this is just a reappointment of Merrimack representative to the Nashville Regional Planning Commission, submitted by Merrimack Planning Board Chair Robert Best. Town Council to consider the reappointment of Karen Elmer as one of Merrimack's representatives to the Nashua Regional Planning Commission as recommended by the Merrimack Planning Board and pursuant to RSA 36:46, parentheses, Roman numeral 3.
So moved.
Seconded.
Way to go. Dan Dwyer, seconded by Bill Boyd. I don't think there's any discussion. All those in favor?
I just
You
wanted to
do.
say real quickly
Go
that
ahead.
I have no problem with reappointing Karen, but I don't know that we've ever seen her here at the council, and I don't think we've seen her at the planning board either. So as Tim alluded to earlier, it's important that the commissioners report back and work with the town. And I just want to urge all of our commissioners and representatives, and Bill, you're doing a great job of that, to try and find some way to come back and communicate with us what's going on, what they're understanding, and see where we might want them to go forward on a particular issue or question. And so as
Good point.
we talk about reappointing people, let's just try and focus on that communication piece to make sure everybody's aware of what's going on. Thanks.
Very good. Yes, Dan?
I wasn't aware of that, so perhaps we could postpone it and make sure that maybe she's still serious about.
Do we know if
Why?
she's
I think
attending?
She sent an email letter
Yeah.
to Becky.
She goes to the NRPC.
She's at the NRP, she's been at the last 2 meetings that I've been to.
Okay.
She's a planner in Bedford.
So, but the planning boards are not getting,
Well, I mean, we've never
Feedback.
gotten official
Info-
responses
right.
back, and I just think it would be good if either the commissions get together and make an annual
Get
or
you.
a semi-annual
Well,
report, on what's going on, or maybe put together just a summary of what they do at the
Sure.
commissioner meeting, just to help us all stay informed of what's
I
happening.
mean, Councilor Rothhaus and I pointed that out, a month ago, 6 weeks ago, that really, we're appointing these people to a commission, and they're not here reporting back on things that might be of importance to the council. I mean, respectfully, if I'm not at that meeting, Tim Roche is probably not here, and then they're technically, and I didn't say this respectfully, they're operating in a vacuum on a decision that, quite honestly, it's something that we need to be looped in on as to whether they need to be embracing their strategic plan or offering a solution or alternative to what Tim and his team have been working on, so. Anyhow.
And it hasn't been completely in the background. I mean, if you
Right.
think about the past year, Tom Mahon and I both worked with them when they were doing their last 10-year plan and worked to try and
The
encourage them not
pipeline
to
is a
support.
good,
Not to support the movement
Right.
of the toll booths and stuff like that, which NRPC did sign up to not support. And so that's changed the dynamics of that a little bit. So we have been having some communication, but more from our other commissioners would be nice as well.
what's that? Yes, Jackie?
Yes, just a small comment to piggyback on that, I like to hear about the function of the group, which we did. I'd also like to hear perhaps more about the actual accomplishments and what has been actually done and how.
Okay.
Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed, 600. And you can start signing this. Okay, we've already done new business number 2, so we'll move on to number 3, donation acceptance from Merrimack Police Department, submitted by Lieutenant Denise Roy. Town Council to consider the acceptance and expenditure of a donation in the amount of $2,475 from Merrimack Crime Line, and I'll let you,
So moved.
well, let me finish it then. To the Merrimack, you're kidding.
I thought Matt just said that.
She's not kidding.
I thought you were, in all due respect, I thought you were finished. I thought when you read it.
Well,
it
I
was-
think, why don't we do
I
it
checked
this
with
way?
management.
Why don't we do it this way? Let me finish the thing. You're blaming on her. Let's listen to the presentation, which I'm sure will not be very long. And then you can do the I move, how's that?
Thank you.
So like
I
two
thought the
sentences,
words came from
like
Matt,
two
though. That's the
sentences
funniest thing.
long.
I go, wow.
From Merrimack Crime Line to the Merrimack Police Department for ceramic plates for tactical vests pursuant to RSA 31:95-B and Charter Article 18-815. 30 words or less, only kidding.
That'll be tough. Good evening. Thank you very much for having us here. Again, we're here to accept a donation from Merrimack Crime Line for $2,475. What this is for is a couple of years ago, we found the need to establish a containment team, and I think we've talked about it before. They're a specialized unit. They're highly trained. They go into high-risk situations, active shooters, barricaded subjects, certain search warrants. God forbid they have to rescue somebody. They're the face you want to see when you need the rescuing. When we established the team, as you can imagine, it's very expensive to outfit everything. We had to make certain cuts where we thought were necessary that we could live, temporarily without. Once we had a discussion with Crime Line about some of the things that we were missing, and for us, at least for Lieutenant Tarleton, who heads up the team, and I, one of the most important things is a back plate. It seems, maybe inconsequential, but it actually is, and I think we can see by the tragedy of the murders that happened in Iowa this past week. Shots can come from anywhere at any time, and unbeknownst to any of the officers. So what these are, just ceramic plates, and I think when he and I were here before for the separate vests for the cars, you had a chance to feel and see. These plates are just similar to, like we have front plates in our vest now. These are similar, they're just thicker and certainly heavier. They go into the back of their vests so that they can be protected from high-powered weapons like rifle rounds and anything like that. So once we had that discussion, the Crime Line stepped up and we gave them a quote for how much the 11 vests for each one of the members would be. They wrote us a check that day. They were very generous about it, and that's what we're here for. Is that good?
They do great work. Now you can make the motion. So moved.
So moved, but just another special thank what a Crime Line organization in town. It's just really, can't say enough good things about that group of people. Thank you.
Absolutely right. Motion made by Dan Dwyer, seconded by Bill Boyd. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
600.
Thank you. Lieutenant LeVake said his background was much better, but I said I'd just like to talk more. So
Thank you very much.
Thank you both for coming.
Thanks. Have a good weekend.
God forbid, I don't know how many words are going to give you to say anything, Chief. Fire Department solar panel presentation submitted by Fire Chief Michael Currier, Fire Chief, to provide an update to the Town Council with solar concerns as it relates to potential fire safety. I know that Eileen had mentioned that there was a conversation with the Chief, and we all thought it was a good idea to come here and just present that information so the public is aware. So, Eileen?
Not to make a joke about the subject because it's very important, obviously, but I told the chief that if he gives this whole presentation,
We kill him?
that he would get the hook. So he's been forewarned.
Oh, my God.
So you're kidding when I said 10 words or less, right?
Get the hook. And Dan will be the one to use it.
He will. Okay, I was asked to come in and do a quick presentation on photovoltaic cells. This is a presentation that I kind of took apart from the training that we provide to fire personnel. And actually, I've cut down almost 3/4 of the slides that were in the original one. So,
God forbid.
it's an 8-hour program. But the issue here is that as we move along in technology within our community, we have goods and bads. And solar power is something that is a good thing, and we're going to, have to embrace that as we go into the future because it's clean. It's clean power. Okay. Some of the facts that we have there in a 24-hour period, you could generate enough solar power to power the entire planet for 4 years. That's a lot. Okay. So looking at that and where we're going, I was asked to come in and try to provide just a little information about solar cells themselves to the public so they can have an understanding, because just in probably the last few years, we have now in Merrimack, there's 130 residences that now have solar power them, just in Merrimack alone. Probably 3/4 of those came in within the last probably 2 years. And within that process, working with the building department, Our building official, Fred Kelly, and myself sat down for a lot of training programs, and we're actually educating a lot of the electricians on how to put these in correctly. Okay, so the homeowners need to understand that piece of the pie. So I'm going to go through this, and I'll kind of go through a lot of the slides fast, but I think I'll provide those to you so you can, maybe in the future, ask me some questions or say, hey, Chief, we want you to go back and go on TV and explain it in more detail. So for the public, but right now, we're going to go through
It might be, if you do want to do more in depth at some point, you might want to consider just doing a program.
If that's what let's go through this and see what we can look, and if questions are generated from the public to the town manager, then maybe that's something that we need to do to educate them on, maybe not just photovoltaic cells, but on other items that do with fire safety. One thing you have to understand that our grid current that we have is alternating current, so that means the current goes two directions. So it's at 60 hertz in North America, so that means it changes direction 60 times every second. So when you look at your lines, there your power is changing direction 60 times every second. DC power is what photovoltaic cells do, is not, it's just a single straight line current, okay? And the differences that I try to tell people between that is that if DC current gets a hold of you and there's enough amperage or watts within that current, you can't let it go. It doesn't let you go. The more it'll contract your muscles, and you can't let it go because there's no pulse in it. Okay? Has anybody ever touched an electric fence? Okay, that's DC current. And what happens when they make those, they have a pulse in those, so it sends a DC current, stops, sends another one, stops. So if you get hit with it, you bounce off it really quick. Horses, cows, and stuff like that. If it didn't pulse, you wouldn't be able to let it go. Okay, so that's the difference between the two currents, and they are both very dangerous, but DC's has its nuances. If you look at photovoltaic cells, it's made of individual cells themselves. Those cells go together to make a module. Those modules go together to make a string, and those strings go together to make an array. So it's pretty much as what you see on a house is an array, and they're all individually controlled. So if you look at that, you have probably between 15 and 72 cells measuring about 5 by 3 feet, producing about 20 to 40 volts per module, which is about 100 to 350 watts. So each string in a residential solar system, voltaic solar cell system, produces up to 600 volts DC. In the commercial, it's about 1,000 volts DC. A 20 module array can produce over 6,000 watts of power, okay, within your residence. So there's a lot of power being generated on there, and that's where those people say, their meter turns backwards because they can't use all that power. It's fed back into the grid itself. One thing that we have to understand, the people in the community have to understand, that if you have a 20-foot by 50-foot array on your house, that weighs about 2,500 pounds. Okay, there's a lot of weight. Now you have to look at your snow loads and that type of stuff. So if you're having somebody that's coming into you to identify that I'm going to put an array on your house and they're going to give you this great deal, make sure that every plan that you have is stamped by a professional engineer so your structure of your house will hold that weight load in New England along with the snow. Very important. There's all different types of systems, as you can see. The single-family residences, they're through different neighborhoods. They have them now that look like ivy on the side of a building. If you look to the right-hand picture, those are solar cells all tied together that on a building look like ivory. And they're generating the same amount of wattage, okay, that is out there. So, yeah, from a distance, you know what I mean? So it's amazing how the technology is going through. They have them now that look like shingles. You don't have those big arrays anymore. Okay, they're on metal platforms. As you can see here on the picture on the right, there's a metal platform with solar cells. They're actually adhered to it. Problem with those, if it's wintertime and nobody knows they're up there, or somebody goes on your roof, or there's a fire and they go on the roof, if they crack or penetrate those cells, that electricity now energizes that whole metal pad, and your whole roof is now energized with 600 volts. Okay, so there's a lot of safety measures that have to go in place. Pardon? Well, there's yes and no. The only thing that doesn't affect is the moon. Fire affects it, and if we have a fire, our lights will actually cause them to get to a point where they'll generate electrocuting powers. So I'll get into that.
Okay.
But I got to go fast.
No more questions. We're taking this serious.
On the solar cells back in before 2011, what they were doing is they were putting solar cells on the roof, and they were putting the power, if you see on the right, a lot of the power was just under the roof shingles. Okay, you're sheathing there. So in a solar system, you can't cut that power off at all. It's always live. So when firefighters were going to cut a roof or ceiling, when they went through those, that actually roof itself, their saws would hit these, and they would be under the voltage from the solar cells themselves. So it was very dangerous. So again, another close-up of the cells. If you look at it here, they have tiles now that look like solar cells. If you look at that building on the right, there's no way if that building had a fire you can even go on the roof because there's that much power being generated there.
That would be a big deterrent on your method of fighting, wouldn't it?
It's
You'll talk about that. Never mind. I'll be quiet.
No question.
They have multiple solar systems. You can have a thermal or photovoltaic. Thermal cells use water or some type of antifreeze in those systems, along with the photovoltaic, which generates just electricity. Again, water weighs 8.33 pounds per gallon. So if you're talking 400 gallons, you have 4,000 pounds of water-ish. You know what I mean? So it's very heavy, so you got to ensure that whoever is installing these on your roofs, they have engineering drawings that are stamped and approved by a professional engineer. Again, more thermal panels up on roofs. A lot of commercial sites are putting thermal panels or photovoltaic cells on flat roofs. You really can't even see those until you get up there, especially if they're involved in a fire. They're getting widely used for ground mounting, side of buildings. People are starting to make their buildings out of photovoltaic cells to generate power. A typical mounting section here is, if you look at it, there's tracks that are put on your roof. There's screws that are drilled into the rafters, and the arrays are put on the racking system themselves. These racking systems are made of aluminum, so if you have a high heat fire in the attic, these things have a tendency to melt, and then the whole array falls off. If you look at it here, this is a quick diagram of how each of the bolting systems is supposed to go into your rafters. And if it doesn't do that, the system is liable for, you're talking 2,500 pounds. There's a lot of stress on that system if they're only putting in the plywood and not the rafters. Very important to have a competent person put these systems up. And how that works, kind of quickly, is that you have your arrays on the right. Your circuit system goes to a combiner box. Combiner box goes to a disconnect, goes to an inverter. The inverter changes it from DC power to AC power. That AC power goes into your circuit breaker box in your house, and you use that power. Whatever's left over goes into the power lines sent back to the grid. Some of the important things that we have to look at, and some of the ordinances that we may be bringing to you in the future, is type inverters that we use in the community for safety. There's central inverters, string inverters, and micro inverters. Central inverter is a system that they're located away from the panel. This is a commercial application outside, commercial application inside. This is a residential application inside, and then a residential application outside. And if you look on these converters, there's a lot of labeling on there. They've considered that labeling to be very, very important in the NFPA 70, which is the electrical code, the International Building Codes, and UL listed products. And there's a whole section in the code book referencing to labeling. The one that I want to talk about here is the microinverters. If you look at these, they're actually placed underneath every module, and those microinverters have the ability of shutting the power off at the module rather than a combiner that's somewhere else in the building, so your whole building is not live all the time. Once these
Sorry. How much more would that be to, if you were to do a house and you were to add this for the safety feature How much additional would it
I don't
cost?
know what the exact cost is. I know we have multiple
Approximately.
companies within the town. Some are not putting in converters, and some are putting in microconverters. So I would imagine it's very comparable.
Okay.
It depends on the safety aspects of the company itself. Yep. And how that works is that, it comes down through the array. Instead of coming to a combiner, that inverter is at the cell itself, and that power goes right into your circuit breaker box and then into your house for power, or then it goes out to the grid if it's not being used. Different disconnects out there. Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't, and I'll try to explain that to you here, how that works out. So in a normal system, power comes in through the cells, down to the combiner, down into your inverter, through your DC into your breaker, and what you use stays in your house, and what you don't use turns your meter backwards, and that powers your house. All the systems that we're talking about today are not battery backed up. 90% of the systems that are put into homes nowadays are just, when the sun's out, you get power. When the sun's not out, you don't get power. When you lose power, electricity because of a storm, you have no power. The solar cells aren't doing enough for you. Okay, and some people says, well, what if you have power out during the day when the sun's out? Your system still will not work, because what happens is you have to have power coming in from the line. Your inverters have to read that power to stay on. If the line goes down, the inverters go down. Okay, so what happens is you won't generate power. It's a safety feature, so you're not taking power and sending it somewhere where it can't be used. Okay.
I could wait till the end, but I'll probably forget. Why then could you not shut the power down if there's a fire situation by running to that inverter? Or is the power stored? It's not stored,
Because the solar cells are still generating.
Solar cell is still generating, so if I'll back up once here. See the picture up here, it's got the solar cells?
Yeah.
Okay, so if I cut the power off to the inverter, that's gonna come up in a second, let me kind of get through this.
Okay.
I'll answer your
Fine.
question.
Yep. No,
Okay.
that's great.
I tried to think of them all. The battery banks that are offered out there now, if you do backup power, is you have a lead-acid battery. They have to be very ventilated because they give a hydrogen and sulfuric acid gas. They have your lithium-ion batteries now that are not wet batteries, but the problem with those, they generate a lot of heat, and we've been having fires with lithium-ion batteries, the phones system, so there's some issues there of concern there. The labeling that I talked about under the International Building Code is, I'm going to zip through this really quick, is that they've spent a lot of time identifying every piece of this system by a specific code. If you look at the code listed there of the label and the type of labels, the colors, what has to be said, because this is a very dangerous situation for people that don't understand solar power and start dealing with it or trying to fix it themselves. But all these labeling systems, as you can see, are very specific to solar power, and they're everywhere on the system, and they're all identified by code. This one here, 69.560B, is a new one that just came out in 2014 that's being put in place now. If you look at that and you see the square, that's considered the building of the house. So they have to make this label specific to the house. And it's going to tell you where the solar panels are, where your disconnects are, where your circuit breakers are, and utility meters. So when a fire department goes to that scene, they know exactly where to go to minimize the hazard because of the issues that come across with solar power.
Where does this label go?
That goes on the outside of your building by your meter.
Oh, by the electric
Yep.
meter?
And I'll get into that.
Check now.
Well, I don't know whether we have that.
What's that? You know, if you have it. If it was prior to 2011, that wasn't required.
No, it was recent.
It's just what I was going to say. I know you have a ton of information here, but I hope that, to cut to the chase, we're probably looking for a policy of our fire departments and whether they're going to be allowed. As soon as you pull into a driveway and you see the home is solar, it should be save life, and after that, there should be no fireman ever going on the roof and to cut anything. It should be a policy set, knowing the dangers of a house that is solar powered, and then therefore you should have a new protocols on how you're going to attack that fire.
We have those, we're going in place.
Right, I'm
We're
glad
looking
to
at
know,
those
because I would
policies right
hope
now.
that we don't get into a situation where somebody's up on the roof needlessly putting themselves in danger because they're solar panels. Sometimes you just have to try, is the house empty? Is the human life safe? At that point, if it burns to the ground, then that's an insurance company issue at that point.
And what happens
I hate
here
to
is
sound
that-
so cold
Right.
about it, but most people have no idea what they put on their roofs. They really don't. They think they're saving money, and perhaps they are. But the fact that if your house is on fire, there's only so much you should be asking your city or your community firemen to put out the fire when there's danger all around because of the power issue.
I'll be curious to see if insurance companies are picking up on this.
Well, a lot of the building codes now and the Chiefs Association, the International Chiefs Association get into the IBC, and they're trying to give some parameters for these people. So this is a fire size up. What we've done in this town is we've identified by location of all these homes. We're putting those into our iPads in every engine, and we're going to be providing the information to dispatch. So if we get a call to that location, it's automatically going to come up and let us know what we have before we get there. We are coordinating all this with the building department right now. It's great that worked out as part of the fire department, because let me tell you, that change we made way back when has made this community safer than I could imagine. I knew it was going to, but it's amazing how much information is shared between these two groups, the inspections that are done together, and the safety applications we're putting together from building, fire, and health, doing them all at the same time. It's just, to me, it's amazing. Okay,
Which is,
thank you.
it should
That
be
was a
done when it's
great,
new.
great thing to do.
You're not going back and changing it. This is
That's right.
developing.
Yep,
So
this
you're
is
developing it together.
Yep.
Yeah.
So our fire companies are now starting walkthroughs, so when they put the photovoltaic cells on the, on Daniel Webster Highway there at the funeral home, they walk through that whole system so they understand them, because we know when they're being built. So that starts to work. One of the things that we have to do on the thing is that Dan talked about procedures. Well, now we've always done a 360, but every time you get on the scene, the officer's first job is they have to do a 360 of the building to make sure he knows what's going on around that, determine what's going on. Is there voltaic cells? Are there solar cells on fire? What type of systems they are? Are they photovoltaic? Are they thermal? Or are they both? If you look at this house here, pulling up on the scene, you wouldn't know anything about this house. It looks like a normal house. We had smoke coming out of the garage or the building. The officer still needs to go around and make his 360. If you go to the right of that building, that's side D we call it, there's your labeling. So right off the bat, he knows there's solar cells on that structure. As you go around the back, as you go around the back of the building, you can see the cells on the roof, and that's going to tell us how we're going to fight that fire differently. If you look at that fire, and if you look at those cells that are on the roof, there's no room around them at all.
Right.
So you don't have access to it. We're trying to, as a chiefs organization, get changes in the building codes to give us 5 feet down, so we can access around there in a safe manner. Okay, again, there's this whole roof there is solar shingles. You wouldn't even know that unless you start seeing the labeling.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And if the labeling was missing, you have a really big
until
problem.
you get up there, and then the problems increase. So the object here is to try to educate the people and educate the fire department and the community on, notification. I'm not saying solar cells are bad. They're great. It's good technology, and it's something that I think in the future we're going to see more of, and we need to. But we need to make sure that we have the
But there are
safety
issues.
concerns all addressed before we get there. So if it's in fire, one thing we have to understand is that there's fire and water, electricity and water links. So our current rating now is, if you look at the fog streams that are there, one's kind of more of a straight stream and one's a little bit wider. They're saying that a 10-degree stream is what we have to use or try to use, because it conducts the less electricity, but still gives us enough water to attack the fire. Too big, it doesn't do any good. If it's too small, it conducts too much electricity, so we have to open it up. They're saying 10 degrees between 10 and 20 feet. I said, well, how do you know that? The class that I just attended, okay, at the fire academy, they said, well, when you feel it tingling, you back up till it stops. Okay.
Imagine pouring water on electricity.
Okay, so those where our and guys have been trained,
That's right.
and we try to look at that, so
That's
you
what
can't
I'd
get
say.
close. It's something you
Everybody's
really
out
have
of the
to be
house.
aware
See you
of.
later.
I can see this training going to the nth degree here in Merrimack and other places. I actually had a program today. We had a class with the fire academy and the fire chiefs, and a lot of the chiefs and training guys know I have this program, and I got a stack of cards, send it to me, send it to me, send it to me. So Merrimack again in the lead. We're going to get this out there and get everybody trained so, nobody gets injured. But again, if you look at this here, on the right-hand side on top, they're making slate shingles now with the integrated photovoltaic cells within them. Okay. Wow. If you look at the bottom picture, you can see what we're looking to try to do, get spacing around it, so firefighters have access to those. If we don't have access to the roof, we have to cut from the side to vent to get those toxic gases and smoke out, so we can get firefighters in to put the fire out. If that fire is on the middle, it's going to draw it right across that whole roof.
Yeah.
And then it's going to cause the heat underneath the cells, and they're going to slide off again. So it's a dangerous situation. Sometimes shut-offs work, sometimes they don't. As I said earlier, this is not DIY work, okay? You need to have professionals do your solar install. And if you look too, there's labeling, and one thing Dan did mention to me is that there's solar breakers on that bottom picture that aren't labeled. Okay, nobody would know, especially if they have a system that is a shingle base where you can't see it in the snow or something in that line. One thing they try to tell us to do is to cover it. I'm going to send a guy up with tarps during a fire to cover it. Okay? If it's windy, we're in trouble. My comment here, and comment to a lot of other departments here, is this covering is after the fire's out. We have to cover those to stop them from generating power when we're going in to investigate and look for hidden fires and do an overhaul. That's when we have to cover
You're
them.
clearly not doing it during an active fire.
That's correct. Okay. They said use foam. That's good, but if foam slides off in about 10 minutes, it goes away. That doesn't work. No.
I knew you were going to say that.
It's what does it say? It's Class A and Class B foam, so we're good there. And then if you look at the microinverters that I brought up earlier and that are attached to each one, if you look at this picture on the left, you'll see the microinverters are on every cell that's there. If for some reason they lose power, the microinverters will shut down and the power is stopped at the array itself. Okay, so if I shut the breaker down, the power's not going to the inverter, they shut down. If we lose power on the line, the power's not going to the inverter, they shut down. That's kind of where we want to head towards. And that's where UL, NFPA, and the IBC is heading towards also for the codes to help with
So
this.
you want the micro inverters?
Correct.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know what the exact price is, but as Eileen did indicate, they are expensive. So looking at this system, so if I have a system and I have a malfunction, I shut it off at your breaker panel, all I'm doing is shutting off the power from those solar cells to the AC disconnect and coming out of the inverter. That's it. If I shut off the inverter, remember I said that sometimes disconnects don't work, so if I shut off the inverter, nothing happens. So I have a disconnect that does nothing for me. Okay? If by any chance we are able to shut off the disconnect at the combiner, and the code doesn't require a disconnect there, something else we're going to look at here, is that we can shut the combiner off, but combiners are stocked with capacitors. So it'll take at least 5 minutes for the capacitors to discharge enough to kill the power that's coming out down to the building. And you always have power from these cells to the combiner itself.
Chief, what, fire doubles every minute?
A fire will double in size every minute, every 60 seconds.
So you don't got 5 minutes.
You got 5 minutes.
Okay? And then if you start looking at industrial applications, you have combiner boxes and disconnects there, but all those other wires and those tubes, they're all hot. There's power from those solar cells. They're all live. So if you have a fire there, you can't cut anything. You don't know where to cut. Because when they go through the building, where do they go? Okay? So there's a lot of things we have to worry about and be concerned with. This here was a picture of a box that was found out west where a guy tried to make his own shutoff.
Oh, my God.
UL did indicate that there's a code now under 690.12.5 that they have to be UL listed shutoffs. Sure. Okay? And people do weird things. Okay? But there are gray areas. There says they have to be shutoffs, but they don't say where they are, the number of them, and the method involved. So we're working on those issues too. And again, putting water on a fire, is that a good idea? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. UL did some testing on firefighter gear, and they actually did testing on these to find out if they were good enough to handle the electrocution or the electric. And some are and some not. I'll hit that at the end here, but we'll talk about firefighter gear and some of these type of systems that are out there. Alternative light sources, when we arrive on the scene at night, we light the place up for safety. But the more light we put on the fire scene for safety, the more we're generating through the photovoltaic cells. The fire itself, if it's exposed to the cell, will generate power, but the moon will not.
It's reflective?
I don't know. This is the UL report. I've read probably 90% of it. I enjoyed the report. If you want to, but some people may not. That's my thing. So you go there, and looking at the electrical hazards that are on there, what UL did was they took firefighter tools. If you look at these tools, they're all grounded, because when they were cutting through those, they didn't want to hurt the guy that was actually, I don't have time to bolt and ground every tool when they go up. It just doesn't work that way. But if you look at these axes and these they're live. When they cut those wires, that's a small wire on one cell, okay, or one module, and they're generating a lot of enough power to scar these tools that they're using. If you cut through them and that wire happened to be below the roof line, the actual line itself starts burning, and not only are we trying to put out the fire, but by cutting the line, we're making another fire, or creating a fire in different locations, and they continue to burn. Okay, modules will generate power, burnt or not burnt. You put an axe through a module, you can see that what happens is that you can see the fire and the arc generating there. That underneath that photocell we talked about was steel. As soon as you break that plane and ground that steel or have that hot lead on the steel, now that whole plate becomes energized.
That's right.
So how you do and how we fight fires is changing. And everybody has to learn that it's different now. Even if you look at an array after it's been taken down, they reconstruct the array, they generate power off that. These are burnt arrays right now, and they looked at each module on an array. After it's burnt, that's still generating 46.920 volts DC. This one here on the top fell off a roof, okay? After it landed on the ground, they went over, and if you look at it and they're touching, look at the bottom picture. There's not much left to it, and it's still just the wires are generating 47 volts, and one's 21.8 volts after it has fallen off the roof. Under fire situations, you have to understand too, is if the fire starts underneath the array, on this array here, the test they did, the fire started, they had to let it break through and break the array so they can get water onto it to put it out. And once they did, they tested the damaged array, and the array was still putting out 227 volts after being damaged and burned. Okay, and looking at how people do wiring systems, they break, again, shock hazards. This one here is, if you look at it, it's all burnt. You can barely see the wires in there, but that array is still generating 47 volts of power. Okay, at night it makes it worse. You've looked at the picture on the left. How can we tell if there's an array on that building unless that officer does that 360 and sees that label on that meter? Or we do the pre-active work that we have, identify them, put them in the computer so we know when we're going to a house with a solar system, as long as they got a permit to do it. If they didn't, we would never know. If you look at some of the inhalation hazards, cadmium is a carcinogenic. That's what a lot of these cells are made out of. If you look at them, it's semiconductor materials. You're talking gallium arsenide, you're talking phosphorus. Gallium is actually a metal. Arsenide is a mixture of that. It's a gas, arsenic. So they make a material which is highly toxic and carcinogenic. They have phosphorus, which they call is a LD50 or lethal dose 50 at 50 milligrams per liter. So what that means, that's a small amount. But when they tested I hate to use this, the animal population, when they gave them 50 milligrams per liter in the air, 50% of them died. That's what an LD50 is. Okay, so it's pretty toxic stuff, especially when it's burning. And we've kind of solved that problem earlier, multiple years ago, because when we wear our air packs, the guys are not allowed to take them off until we do cyanide air monitoring, CO. We go in the meters, and we complete air monitoring and venting even before we let the investigators go in. okay, because of these issues.
What you do already covers that.
Yes,
Okay.
but I don't have sensors that monitor for gallium arsenide or phosphorus, and they're very expensive, so we won't have those. So we'll monitor for the specific gases and the oxygen level and the CO, and once we get those down to acceptable levels with the ventilation, we will assume that it's safe. Sometimes if we have if we have solar systems, we may not even be able to come off air. Your overhaul and everything's going to be done on air. So it's just going to take longer times and longer scene times than in the past because of those type of systems. And again, tripping hazards, snow on roofs. Sometimes you will not see them, especially if it's snowing hard. Some of the findings that they found was that they indicated that photovoltaic systems are going to be an issue, and the fire departments have to change their operations. Okay? You're going to need staffing and people to do that. So when you arrive on the scene with a 3-man engine company, and you may have to start doing your photovoltaic work on the ground before attacking that fire, making things safe. When the next engine companies come in, they'll start doing that. And that's one thing that Councilor Dwyer was indicating on his statement he made earlier. We have to think of that. One thing that they found with UL when they did all the file examinations is that as a photovoltaic fire is different every time. They tried to put a same fire in the same thing, and it did different things every time they tried to do that. So no one is ever the same. Electrical shocks, again, if you're using water, you have to be looking at about 20 feet to fight the fire from that system. They found that firefighter gloves, boots, give you limited protection against electrical shock as long as the insulation of the gloves is not compromised and they are dry. I've never been to a fire where we didn't use water. So, again, we have some concerns there when you're talking with these photovoltaic cells. And then turning off a cell is not that easy. Even severely damaged solar cells are capable of electrocution. And personnel that are working around the fire ground itself have to understand this whole thing could slide off. And when it does, if it lands on a puddle of water, we showed you one that had 227 volts on the ground. Okay, so there's issues and concerns there. Last couple of slides here. I'm going as fast as I can. Some of the things that we're going to look at for the public themselves on insulation. Another white paper was done by a lot of the companies that make these cells. I read that one too. It was thick. And what they ended up doing is over a 10-year study that they're looking at the longevity of a photocell for 25 years. So 10 years into it, they find that up on the top right corner, a lot of them aren't installed properly. Okay, they're starting to leak. Areas are starting to corrode. If you look underneath that, proper flashing, hooking it down. Down below that, you can see where the array missed the stud. They find that in a lot of applications. So if you're at home and you're having these in, go into your attic and make sure they didn't miss the stud. Have them fix your roof. They're supposed to do that. If you look at the wiring on the left, the wiring is a nightmare underneath there. So you get any type of critters getting in there, they start chewing the wiring. Sure, they might not survive quickly, but you won't know that. And then now you have arcing underneath those photovoltaic cells on your roof, which could generate a roof fire. Not putting the bolts in correctly. If you look at the middle one, that was a squirrel's nest that was underneath one of the cells. So you have to get in there and try to keep those clean. And then on the right-hand side, on the bottom, that's the grounding straps. They're starting to corrode. So as the grounding straps corrode, you get less ohms on the ground, so your ground is not as good as it used to be. You end up with problems again. One thing that we can say is because of the training and with NFPA 70 and with the IBC and the fire chiefs, international fire chiefs around the world, we're starting to get this training out, and we're teaching people and taking those precautions so no fire personnel have been killed in this type of an incident. And we want to get this training out there and let the people know so that doesn't happen. Whew, that was fast.
Good, you did good. Yes, Eileen?
I don't mean to put you on the spot here. If you can't answer me, just say you can't. So to cut to the chase, what happens if the alarms ring and home in Merrimack with solar panels is on fire? What do you do?
What do we do?
Right now.
Right now, what do? We go around and do our 360, and we plan on determining where the fire is and what's involved. We kill the power at the combining box if we can, and then we try to isolate where the fire is compared to where the solar panels and the power coming down is, if possible. If we can't do that, then we have to adjust our tactics accordingly. That's where we are right now in our training process.
I didn't really hear an answer there. So,
What I'm saying is that our tactics will change when there's photovoltaic cells. We're not going to not fight the fire, but we're not going to fight the fire if it's going to endanger firefighters' lives. But if there's lives that are trapped in the building, we're going to go in and try to rescue them, because that's what we do.
Right.
So I guess what's the saying that they use in the fire service? Risk a lot to save a lot, risk a little to save a little. So if there's people trapped, we're going to make a high risk to get in there and to save them. If there's nobody trapped, I'm not going to risk firefighters to save
Similar to what Dan
the
said
structure.
then.
To save the structure.
Yep. And
So-
there's,
so if a regular house
Yep.
with a regular roof goes up and there's nobody in there, goes up and, is on fire, you go and you put it out.
Yep.
And if there is a solar, a solar array attached to the home, there's a lot more assessment that needs to be going on while the fire is going on.
that's correct. And as Mr. McCallie indicated, that
If
the fire
possible.
doubles in size every 60 seconds. So you have to make quick decisions and make a plan fast to stay ahead of it, or you're not going to stay ahead of it. It's just going to be impossible to control.
And what would a firefighter have to go through in order to save a person if there was a person inside of one of these solar homes that was going up in fire? What would the firefighter go through personally?
Well, I would say that there's a lot of stress, but he's going to do his job. He's going to go in, he's going to take lines of water in, and we're going to do the best we can to get through whatever those hazards are to save that person.
Still not an
I don't-
answer. I'm just asking you. You were saying earlier that, if it's not a certain it has to be a certain flow in order to be effective when the solar panels are electrified.
Yep.
So and the only way to tell that is to feel the tingling in your fingers. So I guess what I'm asking you is that and really kind of the whole point of this information is not to scare anybody, but so that people understand that the fire department cannot conduct themselves like they normally would, and it could be at great risk to the firefighters' health in terms of being shocked, and the substances that are being emitted. And I'm putting words in your mouth here, but I just like you to.
But it's hard to answer that specific question because it depends on the tactics. If the fire is in the first floor and it's a two-floor structure and the solar panels are on the roof, the hazards and the potential for those solar panels to be affecting us on that first floor are slim.
Okay.
If the fire is in the attic, now the potential for those solar panels to be affecting us are greater. So that's the tactics and size up that the officers and the decisions that fire officers have to make all the time. You get there and you have to look at the situation, you make your walk around, and you make your attack, and then based on that information, you have seconds to make those decisions you're going to make that attack because they're on the third floor, they're not involved, they're on the back of the house, the fire's in the front of the house, it could be a basement fire. It depends on where those lines go. Is it an inside combiner? Is it not? Is it outside? So those decisions all have to be made very quickly so you can set up a tactic to put that fire out. So there's no one answer, and that's kind of what we said. Every fire is different.
And that's why you're starting to keep a database of what types of.
Correct.
So that when you go there, you'll know an awful lot more and you can make your decisions.
That's correct.
In a more
Timely manner.
Thank you.
So to install, you need to get a building permit for solar
If you're
installation?
not changing the structure of the building, you need to get an electrical permit
Okay,
from the building department.
okay,
And because the
so,
building department's on the fire department, again, that works out.
so
very
you'll
well for
know
us.
is my
Yep.
point. Okay. I'll ask that same question now. Have you heard of anything related to insurance companies? This problem having insurance companies increasing rates or anything? I'm
Have
just
not.
curious. I would suspect it would be.
If I can add, there's a lot of people throughout America that are handyman, engineers, electricians, and they're doing a lot of these as homemade projects. They may be getting the permits, but a lot of people are coming up with their own components. The
Yeah,
industry
true.
itself avails itself to eBay-ish, like buying of panels. You could buy panels on eBay and Craigslist and all kinds of other places. A lot of people are doing this as themselves. That's why I'd rather take it as a board, as a council. I'd rather take that out of your hands and let you know that the policy of a certain town or government, if it's first save the life, seconds to respond to saving the life. But if you fully know that a house is completely, it's an attic fire, to say what's that, and it's got solar panels everywhere, just get the marshmallows. I'm not trying to make a bad joke, but I don't want our firemen going to tackle a house that is powered and just poses danger from all kinds of levels, from the gas, from the phosphorus, from the electricity, and let the 130 people know in town, whoever decided to put these on their roofs, that there's a level,
Elevated.
an elevated level
hazard.
of how our fire department can respond to a fire at your home.
And that's correct, and that's based on the tactics when you arrive, depending on that location of that fire.
Yep.
And that's training your fire officers to make those decisions, and that's where we are right now.
Tom?
Thank you. And I don't mean to denigrate the importance of all of this, but I think it needs to be very clear that these systems are not inherently dangerous except
They're
in the
not.
area of the
That's
system
correct.
itself. And so attacking the outside of the house or attacking the roof of the house is where you would find the largest increase in danger. As you said, going into the basement, going into the first floor, or even the second floor, if you're not underneath the roof, is probably not any increase in danger to the individual if he's trying to get out somebody who's trapped in the house or something like that.
Correct.
Or not significant.
And
And
that-
so it sounds very scary, and I think there's some words going around here that says, gosh, if I put this on my house now, I'm in huge risk and stuff like that. There are parts of the house that are at risk. There are issues that need to be understood and concerned. And you shouldn't attack a solar array to try and salvage it or salvage the roof underneath it or something like that. But you should still do your job to save life and limb, and then if you can, save property. But and you've been training your people in a response to Eileen to be careful.
Yep.
And to take care of themselves and not put themselves in harm's way unnecessarily.
And that's with any fire, but as I stated earlier in the beginning, solar panels are good things. You
Yeah.
know, it's gonna help our environment, it's gonna help the individuals, you know what I mean? We just need to understand there are some inherent hazards with those, and I preach this all the time, we go into schools, how do we prevent fires? We do fire prevention. So when you put these on, you have to understand that.
Put them in correctly.
Put them in correctly, get your permits, get them inspected, and then every year have them inspected. Make sure there's no squirrels underneath them. Make sure the grounds are not starting to corrode off. You know, what I mean, that's all fire prevention.
But Chief, really, I have to say, that comment about checking the squirrel's nest, no one's gonna do that. No one's going up there with
They are if
ladders.
they get them inspected.
Just human nature, people are not going to go up and check underneath those panels. It's just not gonna happen. I mean,
And I'm
one
thinking
out of 10, 1 out of 100, the anal carpenter kind of guy is gonna go do it, but I just don't see it as the majority of Americans will put them on their roof, second, 3 stories high, however high they're up. It's not gonna, it's too dangerous too. I'm sorry, I'm 53. I'm not getting on a ladder on a second floor house checking my roof. It's not gonna do it.
So you don't get hired to be the inspector.
No,
I mean,
but
that's-
I'm
that's
just
no
saying,
problem.
if it comes to a point where I've known a couple of guys in my life who have gone on to shovel their roofs and they got broken legs. You know, so I told myself 10 years ago, I'm not gonna do that.
But that
So-
goes into the inspection like a chimney. People hire chimney sweeps that
That's
come and
right.
inspect their
True.
chimney every year.
True.
So I would hope that these solar companies would start offering a service to their customers that every year for whatever, people have their septic pumps. Every year you come in, you have it inspected, that's fire prevention. You know what I mean?
Finley and then Bill.
Just a quick comment. I think these are all things that are something that should be contemplated, but I think squirrels aren't going to generally go up there unless there's something blocking it up to make a cozy place, I guess, yes.
Well, it
They're not-
generates heat, so it's nice and warm.
Right, but they're not, there's wind, I don't think that's likely a spot for them. They prefer spas and hot tubs, but and they may, but I think not. But my point is that definitely something to contemplate for you guys, for your department in particular. You have to be, and your staff has to be aware of everything that you're speaking about tonight. People should know about it, but the chance of a fire because of building code as it is low anyhow. Making homes, a good inspection would be a great idea, and probably should happen annually at least. But I think I'm leaning in with Tom that it's really, it can be a problem. You have to know about it, and the knowledge is going to be the biggest benefit of all to everybody concerned. And I don't think it's going to be a raging disaster for people who have these systems.
No, I don't think I tried to portray that either.
No, but I think there's a panic
I
here.
think some of the questions that are coming out imply that.
Yeah,
Right,
applying that.
that's
but
all.
it-
That's all I'm thinking. It's definitely something that everybody should be aware about, but I think it's not the panic that it seems like.
But
Bill?
in 10 years, you're going to see probably 50% of most residences within the community have solar or some type of systems, and that's okay. The object is that on the onset of this, we want to ensure that the fire department has the training and education on how to handle them correctly and
technology.
understand the tactics that are involved in it.
Right.
And the homeowner understands that if they don't maintain the system,
Right.
okay, there may be some alternatives to that fire going out because they're not maintained. And by inspecting and maintaining them, i.e. with chimney fires every year, okay, inspecting and maintaining your chimney, you prevent that from happening. And I think that's the message we're trying to send. Our crews and the fire officers at Merrimack understand what they're doing. They're good officers, and they can change their tactics at a moment's notice to make the system safe and extinguish the fire. It's that we need to ensure that the people out there understand that there are inherent hazards if they don't maintain their system, their car, their chimney, whatever those issues are. Doesn't make them any more dangerous. It just, again, that's awareness.
Bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Over the weekend, I had the opportunity to read, I'm going to roll the dice and say that the chief has read this. The National Fire Protection Agency just issued a report in July of 2016 entitled Development of Fire Mitigation Solutions for Photovoltaic Systems Installed on Building Roofs,
Yep.
Phase 1.
Phase one.
Phase 1. I mean, I got it right here. It's just beginning to scratch the surface as to how fire departments need to be attacking this particular problem. In the context of reading this, some of the notes that I've made, and as the chief has alluded to, solar arrays, for all intents and purposes, are relatively safe. The only time you have a problem is if they're improperly installed, you get faulty wiring, or there's insufficient insulation up on the roof that allows that particular area to be able to breathe. And that's the only reason why these things would catch on fire. So there's two ways to approach it. You take the Dan Dwyer approach, which I support. No, I'm not. This isn't funny. I respectfully, Finley, this isn't funny. You take the Dan Dwyer approach, which is if you want it, you build it, and you accept the consequences of it, or you let the chief come back and say, well, we're only going to allow this type of geometric array on your roof because I need to be able to get my firefighter up there to be able to do A, B, C, D, and E so that he doesn't get electrocuted. You create more inspectional rules that the building department has to be tasked with in order to make sure that these particular arrays are meeting whatever particular regulatory guidelines you're slapping on them. So it's either we recognize that there's a problem with this, so you either take the approach that you regulate, and you regulate the hell out of it, or You allow these people to do as they see fit, and they understand that with this particular choice, there's a potential consequence with this. And the consequence is that the fire chief and his team are going to make a decision as to whether or not they're going to be able to save the house or not. It's that simple.
It should be.
It should be that simple.
And that, I would believe, would be the education and training that our officers get to make those decisions.
The thing that was even more galling in the context of some of the stuff that I read, there was a story out of California where the fire department was alluding to some of the problems that the chief was talking about tonight. And one of the solar companies actually went on the record and says, well, if they cut it off at the power source, if they just cut the power source, firefighters are going to be fine. They're not going to get hurt. And even myself, the whole covering of the, it's like the calculator, the solar calculators. When you cover the solar thing, the thing shuts off. It's the same principle. It's not going to shut up unless you put something over it to cover it. And to me, the risk, there's no way to shut those things off. So reading that article was just very scary that somebody in the solar industry, to me, in my opinion, was not as versed as to what the safeties and what the dangers are in having this type of facility on your roof or array on your roof. Thank you.
I actually have always been a guy who believes whatever you want to do to your house is your business, and the buyer that wants to buy from you should be aware of what might be in your house. But that's an aside. I was curious, most of these systems are going now, if I understand it correctly, are not owned by the homeowner. It's a lease agreement where, or is that not true?
It's a lease agreement.
A lot
A lot of lease agreements.
And what happens is that you really have to look into it, because that lease agreement goes with the house.
Right.
So if you sell your house, whoever's buying it has to buy that lease agreement.
Correct. You
Right.
have to continue it.
So I guess, not looking for any answers, but I'm just imagining that there's some kind of culpability, liability, whatever, on that company to make sure these systems are good. I don't know, I've never seen a contract with them.
I have.
But I think that they have to, they check out the roofs and they make sure, that the place, if it's a reputable company, they would be making sure that the roof can handle it, that all that stuff comes into play.
And again, that's why my comment here was that when you hire a company and they give you plans, look at the plans, make it stamped by a professional engineer. They've done their due diligence. They explain to you the whole system, the shut-offs and what they are. And then if you have questions, come to the building department and they can give you information that you need, because they need a permit anyway.
Right.
So.
I suspect over time, not only will the techniques, the tactics evolve, as they already have, but the actual solar panel technology will change. And someday, maybe there will be a shut-off.
Well, I'm hoping that someday, like a Texas Instruments or an Intel will invent a chip that's a microconverter built right into it that'll isolate the power from itself. It's coming. They will do that.
And they will
do
that.
It's just
Especially
right
when
now,
you get
we
into
have to do
the,
something.
right.
It was in the paper today's paper, Elon Musk on the set of Desperate Housewives or something, with these tiles that are so beautiful, that they're solar.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And it's a great concept because, as I say, I'm an environmental engineer, so anything that we can do to help protect the environment and protect the people is good.
Yeah,
but we have to protect all the people.
It's a matter of the safety measures catching up with the technology.
It's more of a two follow-up questions. One, we're not sending, for the people that have a solar array on their property, the town's not going to be sending out a building inspector to check anything anytime soon.
No, we send the building inspector out to check the electrical, because that's what we're permitted to inspect. By building codes, we don't check the arrays and how they hook it. We do, but there's no codes that say that.
So moving forward,
Right.
So moving forward, if somebody was putting an addition on their house, obviously they get the building permit, they put electrical, they're going to take out a permit to put the electrical in. If they wanted to slap an array on the roof of that, on that new addition, I mean, Inspectional Services is not going to ignore that particular part of their review, but it's not exactly included. Is that fair? I mean, they're going to look at it as a courtesy because it's good customer service?
No, if it's electrical, it's based on a permit. So if you pull a permit to wire your house and then you decide to put an electrical array on it, that permit covers that array.
Okay,
But the inspection now follows those rules for that array.
okay,
So it has to be inspected and signed off.
okay, fair enough. Okay.
And all the labeling and everything has to be in place.
So some of the stuff, so that gets to my point, the labeling that you talked about tonight, they're going to have to follow those particular
correct.
rules in order for the inspector to sign off
on that permit.
on that permit. Okay.
So that alone helps.
So,
Okay.
those pieces, as I said, the IBC and FPA are starting to push those regulations, so you can see that fix coming, okay? But people have to be aware of that.
Right. Well, it's very informative.
Thank Chief.
Did a good job. There was a lot of information. Even I understood it, and I don't understand electricity at all.
Community TV here in town would be great.
I really
If
would.
you get with Nick and somebody else to go over, I really think it'd be great to have on the loop for our local station.
And again, it's not to scare. It's more
Yeah,
education.
Of course.
And I
Just
tried to,
education.
that's why I said in the beginning, it's good
You're right,
stuff.
you did say that.
But, you know what I mean? It's like with any fire prevention. We start teaching kids when they're young to, stop, drop, and roll, to listen to the fire alarm, change your batteries when we change your clocks back Saturday, change your
Well,
batteries.
it's like having
You know what I
gas
mean?
heat. Some
So-
people don't
Make
want
a
to do
plan.
gas because they're scared of it.
Make a plan.
But there's a certain amount of safety measures you have to do, so it's a similar.
But what's good here is in Merrimack, the residents here have a great resource. They have the building, fire, and health department
All
in
together.
the same office.
Yeah. That was one of our better moves.
That was,
Yeah, it was.
I think I say that a lot here, but
But,
I live it every day, so I see
So
it
just one
working.
final comment, Chief, as you're talking about these things and the different dangers, voltage itself is not particularly dangerous.
Correct.
It's power that you're worried about, or amperage of
Amperage,
current
yeah.
that actually flows. So there were a couple of times when you said there's 20 volts, there's 200 volts, you've got to understand what else is behind that. I mean, at 20 volts on a burned out array, if you put any kind of current flow on that, it probably goes to zero in a hurry. Maybe not, I don't know. But just throwing out numbers and saying voltage is a problem is a little misleading, and some people are going to take exception to that, and then they start to disagree with what you're saying and not listen and stuff like that. So just caution to be a little cautious, careful about how you're implying things are dangerous.
Yeah, I understand
And
that.
okay, well, but the common people
Common
don't
people don't,
understand it,
yeah.
and so you'll come across somebody who has an inkling, and they'll say, well, voltage isn't the problem, and then they might just disregard the rest of what you're saying because of that. So that's all. Thank you.
Anything else? Seeing none. Well, thank you very much, Chief. We appreciate the
Thanks,
time
Chief.
and the
Appreciate it.
effort you put into this. It's very informative.
How are the horses? Good.
Last but not least, Finance Director Paul McCarley will review the key financial information of the quarter ending September 30th, 2016. And you've got 2 seconds. No.
Any questions?
Any questions?
I've been around Dwyer too long.
Yeah, you got that right.
Eventually, I'd like to move the finance stuff up to the first agenda item.
You're here anyway, Paul.
Whether you like it or not.
Good evening. We're through the first quarter already of fiscal year 16.
I said it's not the best. Do we have the lights turned on?
No, go ahead.
No, because he's got his display up on over your head.
Oh, we do, never mind, I'm sorry, no, never mind, my mistake. I've got it right here in front of me, I wasn't even thinking about that.
It's hard to believe we're already through the first quarter of, actually, we're through the first 4 months of fiscal year 16, 17, and as of yesterday, the department's got their budgets for 17, 18 to start working on, so.
I'm sure they're thrilled.
Right on schedule.
That's it. Imagine how time flies. But so the factors that we do look at: health insurance, New Hampshire retirement system, overtime, and then we look a little bit at our revenues and overall appropriations for the town. And looking at our health insurance comparison, we're down about $18,000 from last year. And a big portion of that is because of the plan changes that we made and the savings involved in the plan changes. As you're aware, we have 4 groups that are on the new health insurance, and 2 more will be coming on the new health insurance. 2 more collective bargaining agreements come on the new health insurance in January. So we should see a little bit more savings as we go forward in the third and fourth quarter of this fiscal year. New Hampshire retirement system, this is kind of twofold. I'll talk about the police. The police had a little bit of an increase in the New Hampshire retirement system of about roughly $40,000. At this time last year, there was 2 vacancies during the first quarter of last year. So that accounts for some of the increase, because now we've got 2 more gentlemen on the rolls and we're paying retirement. The other thing is some of the raises that took effect. So we knew about this increase. So that increase is in line with what we were projecting. Fire had a bigger jump. They went up about $60,000, and that jump is really a 3-fold jump. We did raises for the supervisors in the fire department. We created a paramedic scale, and there, as you'll see on the next slide, the overtime numbers are up. We also budgeted for an increase in overtime in the fire department. So this number is a little bit higher than what we were projecting, but on the next slide, as I go to the next slide, you'll see why. The overtime numbers are higher for the fire department. Like I said, we projected, you can't do an apples and apples comparison because we gave them an increase. The budget was increased. However, there's been significant members of the staff that have been out due to work-related injuries. Months and months. The first 3 months, about 44 shifts had to be covered just on work-related injuries alone. And all related.
Someone's not got the microphone.
So we'll talk about that more. I know that the council asked for the fire department to come in. Eileen, myself, and the fire department with Sharon have a meeting tomorrow to start discussing, putting together a plan to bring forward to the council as requested.
Great.
I do want to say, though, there's also 2 vacancies in the fire department at this time, too, that they have to cover.
Which is adding to the overtime.
Which is adding to the overtime. But it is also with these work-related injuries and the sick and things of that sort.
So how
plus
many
these 2
positions are
vacancies.
they doing overtime for? How many are out in injury for, did you say?
It varies. So right now, I think there are 6.
And then
Is
we've
that
got,
correct, Carl?
we've got 2
Right,
vacancies?
There's 2 vacancies right now,
vacancies
and I think
people
4
out.
people out.
So
So I think
there's
we're covering
6.
6 shifts.
Wow.
6 shifts, and they're 24-hour shifts.
Right,
And
and are
there
they
are 2
firefighter or are they paramedic or both?
Both, and we're covering, if you're doing a 24-hour shift for most of those guys, it's 2 a week. So you're covering for 2 full shifts, so you're covering 48 hours of overtime
Correct.
for 1 firefighter. Now, on the bright side, because we have these vacancies and because they're out with work-related injuries, there's some savings in the salaries. It offsets. So we'll have a savings in the salary line of 8104, for instance, but the overtime line is being overexpended.
As long as
because
the
we have to
people doing
cover
the
it.
overtime don't crash either.
Right, exactly. So that's what we got to look into, and that's what
It
Eileen,
is a problem.
that Eileen and the fire chief, we're going to discuss tomorrow to see what's going on.
This is an anomaly.
Oh, it
I
is.
mean, so it's not like, that was the comment at the very beginning. It's not like we can use this for any real comparison.
Right.
Because you're right, I'm sitting here going, we should have hired people. But the reality is,
No,
the numbers
not
didn't work, in my opinion. I don't know if it'll get any better.
And that's what we got to
unless
look
this
at.
continues to be a
Right.
trend.
Right.
And that's what we got to look at.
I just feel bad for the people doing all the overtime. That's all.
Unless they're loving it.
Some of them are
Maybe they're not.
Well, not if it's that much. My God, overtime is nice, but
Is there any forced overtime, or is it?
There has been some forced overtime
Okay.
because of the
That's a
amount of
difference.
shifts that have to be covered in a week,
that's a lot of,
and there's some forced overtime.
depending upon if it's paramedic versus firefighter.
Right.
Because there's a lot less paramedics than there are firefighters.
Right, and some of the positions we have recently lost with the vacancies, there's paramedic positions, so
So that
there's a little bit of
decreases the
forced
number.
overtime and things of that sort. So, but we'll, like I said, when we come back together in
Yeah.
front of council, we'll have
But it is hard to do
a lot
apples
of,
and apples.
we'll try to get as apples comparison for you. on
Yeah.
that.
I mean, at what point are we compromising firefighters' ability to function on the job? If you've got 6 people out and you got forced overtime,
I mean, you're taxing that individual from physically. From,
that's what I'm
I'm
saying,
thinking
they're gonna crash and burn.
from an exhaustion perspective. I mean, I'm not going to say what I'm thinking, but where do we have the level of concern where we're walking that fine line between maintaining the safety levels that we debated last year during the budget season versus, well, we're not really maintaining that basic level that we were talking about maintaining last year.
Well, that's what we
And
need
but that's a big
from you
concern.
guys.
That's a concern for me.
It is, Councilor Boyd, and that's why we got to get together with the fire
Right,
chief
and get
and look
that.
at this whole scenario about the injuries and how'd they happen versus everything. And
Eileen?
I just, I want to reiterate what Paul has said, in taking into consideration certainly what Councilor Boyd had said at an earlier meeting. We really need to, regardless of whether this year is an anomaly or not, we need to make some decisions. Also, this year, we need to make some decisions. What are we going to do for the rest of this year if, these firefighters are out for months and months and months? Because some of them are out for several months. If we had hired 4 firefighters, would that have helped that? I guess the answer is yes, but I just think it's really important that we're actually at a critical stage right now because of the anomaly. So we have to look at this year about what's going on, and we also, and possible other measures that we might recommend. One of which is, and this is just off of the top of my head, which is not a fire-related head, and that is, maybe we need to contract with a local ambulance service sometimes to cover some of these shifts and that kind of thing, and because you don't want to get into an emergency situation, which is where we're getting to because of these people being out.
Finley and then Bill?
I think when that meeting occurs, that it should be looked into, as well as, I don't know if retired guys could work part-time. There's a lot of part-time that's allowed in the system. I don't know if it is in fire service or not, but if you can get a part-time guy, a temporary part-time, knowing that
Right,
it's
just
going to
for
be a
subbing,
backfill.
like a sub.
If we have long-term outages like this.
Union rules.
No, we have management rights.
We actually have done that in the past. When I first got here, there were people in the service, and they were over in Afghanistan
For over a year,
and
we have
for
hired.
over a year, and so we hired some temporary firefighters. But we were fortunate. I mean, at the time, the economy was worse, and the unemployment rate was a lot higher, so we had the ability to go out and hire people that were available. But now everybody needs firefighters, and everybody especially needs paramedics, because the other thing that we found out in speaking with the chief is that, as we talked about the advanced life support versus the basic life support issues, which, as we know, one advanced life support takes 5 firefighters, whereas basic, I believe, is 2. So even that is escalating this year beyond what it was last year. So it's more ALS calls than BLS calls.
If that could be part of the conversation, I'd appreciate it.
I agree.
For your.
And one other thing about the retirees, it doesn't matter if we hire them for a temporary position, they can only work 30 hours a week.
No,
Because
that's
that's
right.
all
I've
that
seen
the
them part-time,
retirement
so they-
system
It would still help.
would still, it could help, but they're not going to be covering every one of these gentlemen's shifts, they're only going to be covering a portion of the shift.
Right.
And it could be a solution, but I just wanted to say that because I know we have some retired firefighters that I don't want them to say, oh, we can't work. They can only work so many hours.
But if you had enough, you could combine.
You could.
Bill?
Just a question, how close are we to exhausting the overtime budget?
We have plenty of money still left. We have about, hold on a second, let me get to that slide. We have about 40% left in our overtime budget for the firefighters. So we have
40%?
40%. We have about $161,000 left in their budget for the firefighters. So we have money to cover it, but it's one of those things that Eileen asked me on a monthly, quarterly, weekly basis to keep on looking at. Every time we talk about that. So we look at the
I think it's
overtime.
just really important also to talk about the fact that there are for some reason, there's an equal amount of savings in the salary amount. So when we look at the fire department budget, we look at each line, but when we don't become overly concerned unless the budget itself, which is primarily made up of wages and benefits, are significantly or even a little bit over where they should be
Projected.
percentage-wise for the year, the time of the year. And we're okay with those two things combined at this point.
At this point?
At this point, but we keep an eye on it.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Dan?
I want to state for the record that I don't think this is an aberration at all. I'm going to go on the record for saying that. I think this problem is only going to continue. Two, I think forced overtime as a counselor, I view myself as a management person, all 7 of us, and we design policies for the betterment of the town. And I don't like forced overtime one bit, never did.
No,
Don't
I
like it in the
agree.
private sector, and I don't like it in public employees. My third point, I didn't like the OT budget last year, so obviously I'm not liking it now. I'm not going to like it in the future. And fourth, the manpower is key. Just by the simple common sense that I said it to a year ago, I'm going to say it again. If you have 40 employees and they have 4 weeks vacation, you're always short. And so those are my 4 points.
So let's remember that in the future discussions.
Right, because this is for the future discussion of the budget, but the reality is there won't be the savings. So as long as you're recognizing that to make up that manpower is an added cost, then that's fine. But it's not going to be a saver for you.
It may be an
it's
added
not.
cost, but I'm going to believe that the overtime budget won't be $500,000 anymore either.
No, but the salary budget will even be more than that.
But that's where I'm seeing a better savings. In the big part of that budget, I'm viewing that, yes, it's going to cost more to hire 4 people, but in the future, those 4 people, along with, it's going to bring down the overtime budget. You won't have to spend that kind of money in the overtime budget. But as far as the people being hurt, I just think that's always going to be with us. This may be a bad year and a bad time, but month after month after month, I just feel that's why I don't believe it to be an aberration. Maybe 2017 budget, 2018 budget, we can look back and say, nah, Dan was a fool, see, it was a blip. I wanted, for the record though, so we can go back in the minutes 2 years from now, and somebody can say, Councilor Dwyer had it right.
Either that or you were an idiot.
Hey, you know me, I take it on from both sides.
Yes, you do. I tend to
I've been told
agree
I
with
have
you.
thick skin.
Dan, I tend to agree with you, my gut. But I'm also willing to look at the big picture when.
You can look at history. It's not like it's magic. We can't read the future, but we can see what history has shown us, and this is an anomaly.
But that's that good point. If you look back over the last 5 or 6 years, our overtime budget has done nothing but go up.
Correct.
Over year after year after year. So that's why, in combination with injuries, et cetera, that's why I don't believe this
Injuries,
situation
yeah.
is an aberration.
Well, we'll get that
Eileen's-
data.
Discuss further.
Eileen's first budget, I think she reduced the and I'm going on memory, but Eileen's first year here, I think she reduced the overtime budget from what it was. But since that point to this point now, it has gone up throughout the years.
Jackie?
I would think we'd have a better quality staff if we had more employees and less overtime too. I think especially in the fire department where they get exhausted. It doesn't sound like a healthy situation.
Well, I guess one of my, and it may be totally irrelevant, but when you have that many injuries, you have to start looking at causes. So I don't, is there a chicken and egg kind of thing going on here?
I'm sorry, but don't underestimate that forced overtime on the whole morale of the department.
That's huge.
And-
That's
and
a problem. It's
It's
huge.
a problem. And when you have personal days and vacation time, when you have a big employee base, it is a challenge for any company, large or small. When you have 40, 50, 100 people, and they all average 3 to 4 weeks vacation a year, there's always
It goes
going to be a
on.
missing part.
Right. Eileen, you want to say something?
What I wanted to say is I would like if you would give me the chance to do the analysis and give you the information. I will make a proposal to you, and you can agree with it or disagree with it at that time. But all the things that you've said are certainly within my mind, and will be within all of our minds as we're talking about it, because we care about the safety of the people and the employees. So don't worry.
Okay.
We'll explore everything
you've
that we
heard
can
us.
think of it. I don't, everything you've said, I
know
already
you
have
do.
thought of.
I know you
So,
We've had conversations about it.
Yeah. We're just adding to it.
It's going to be frustrating, sitting there and tolerating this.
Well, she just has to let us sort of go, yeah. So that we know we've said what we want to say. I'm sorry, Paul, go ahead.
No problem. I like to end on a happy note.
There you go.
Our revenues. Our interest is about $10,000 more than last year, and the interest rates are starting to rise. Not by a lot, but, we're getting a couple ticks up and down. The building permits was a pleasant surprise. It's about $15,000 over last year at this time, which is a nice surprise because from what I've heard out in the private sector is that there have been some improvements being done in upkeeps and fit-ups and things of that sort, but there wasn't really a lot of expansion in the commercial area. So seeing this building permit uptick a little bit is a nice surprise of $15,000 there. And our auto registrations are up for the first quarter,
Still up.
$25,000. Now, I want to caution people, we raised the amount, once again, because we saw over year after year after year that we were exceeding our auto registrations, we raised our auto registrations. Auto registrations will also be tied to the increase in interest rates. If interest rates rise, that means the buying dollar or the loan, you pay more on an interest for a loan, they're not going to be buying the new cars anymore. Just recently, one of the executive cars dealerships was offering 0.9% for their financing over a 4-year period on the cars are between $30,000 and $50,000. And so they were giving out some good deals to get some of the older cars off the lot for the new model year, so they were giving some of those. So we have seen an uptick a little bit, and out my window I've seen a lot more, I won't say exotic cars, but nicer cars coming into the parking lot, brand new cars.
Do we have any sense how, percentage-wise, in leased versus owned?
We
Curious.
can get
A lot of
that,
people are
we can
leasing.
get that for you, and actually what we'll do is when we bring it up in the budget, because right now, as you know, we're going through an election, so it's kind of,
Well, you're
Diane's preoccupied with
Yeah,
other
I
things, getting the
understand.
tax bill out and things of that
Yep.
sort. So, but we do have, because the leases come up in certain months, so we know we have bigger months than other months.
Oh, I
So
see.
we can kind of get a feel for
Just
the
curious.
registrations in those months versus other months to see leased versus owned vehicles.
Yeah, Paul,
Yes.
the viewing audience is going to want to know where those good deals that you've seen are.
Well,
no free
I really can't say it, but I do have to say that they're not your
Chevys.
Chevys or Toyotas. They're the next line up from them. More exotic stuff. Big, and then we do have sufficient appropriations this year, so which is good. I was looking at the overall where through the first quarter we had about 68% of the budget remaining, and looking at it, we had some big contracts. Our solid waste contract, which we let out at the beginning of the year, and obligate all the money for the rest of the year, and that's included in the bottom line figure. That's 40% of the solid waste budget, it's over $500,000, $530,000. So, and that's just that one line item. So we do have sufficient. I know that the list, when I give you the expenditure report, it shows that we're down for 75%, but there's reasons for it. In Pat's area, the welfare department, we spend all our, we send out all, like the food bank and home hospice, we send that all out at the first quarter, the first of the year. We pay all those payments to those area agencies and things of that sort. And there's some other things. Our debt service is due in August, so that's in the first quarter, and we pay that out. So right now, looking at years past, we have sufficient appropriations, and the revenues are doing well. I do not see any major red flags right now in the revenues. However, as you know, we come back, and if something changes in the next month or so, Eileen will be the second to know, and I'm sure the council will be the next ones to know right after that.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, Jackie?
I was wondering if the big sewage users are all up to date in payments?
Big
Sewer users.
The largest sewer user is, and they pay every 75 days based on their contract. It's a 75-day payment term on them, and they pay within the 75 days. There are some other companies that are paid in upfront. There are a couple that we do, in finance we get them, and we place the call and say, hey, we're looking at it, you're 32 days over, 32 days overdue, not 32, 32 days into the invoice, you're a couple days overdue, when are you gonna send the payment, and we check. So we rarely have anybody who's more than 30, 45 days overdue on a bill to come in. We do that on all our invoices that we send out, our police details, our sewer bills, our industrial sewer bills, and things. And then, of course, the sewer bills are split two different ways. The tax collector bills out part of it, and then the industrial gets billed out separately. So the industrial users are mostly up to date. There's a couple that we make phone calls to. Residential gets paid through the tax base.
Okay.
And some other ones get paid through the tax base.
Continue, Jackie.
The other thing I was wondering is, you said you made the payments at the first of the year to, welfare type
Area
concerns.
agencies.
How do you, is this like how does that work?
Basically, we come before you in the budget. Pat does a lot of legwork before she puts those numbers in the budget. She vets them, she looks at them, she makes sure they have all the information, and Pat makes a recommendation to the council that this is how we'd like to fund these area agencies during the budget process. And once that budget gets approved in April, we then say, yep, this is what we're going to pay the area agencies, and we send them a letter saying this is what we funded you at. Some of them are funded at
Like Meals and Wheels.
Meals and
is one of
Wheels,
them.
and Meals and Wheels. There's the John O'Leary Food Bank. There's Home Health and
Yes.
Hospice.
Yeah.
So some of those we send them out saying, okay, this is what you've been allotted from the town of Merrimack.
just pay it.
And then we pay them.
So it's like a retainer?
No, it's a payment for our
User
citizens
services?
using their
There's a
services.
certain amount of residents of Merrimack utilize those services, so it's more of a gift in a way.
Yeah, it's a donation to the
contribution.
area, a contribution to the area
Support
agencies
services.
Yeah,
for support. And
But I guess my larger question is, if we had a little bit extra 1 year of one particular service, do we pay that over and above what we've paid, or is?
No, that will come,
that's
when, the next year they'll ask in their request, and that's when
They'll
Pat will
ask
look at and say, yes, we had an uptick in
Like the bus.
home health, or the bus is separate, we wait till they invoice
right.
us to pay.
Yeah.
But, for instance, Meals on Wheels, we had an uptick, we serviced X number this year, we serviced Y number this year, it increased 10%, and they'll ask for more money in the next year's budget to cover that, and Pat will make a determination whether that was just a one-time deal, or she sees that going forward, and she might increase it.
But so Meals on Wheels will keep that will do the service, no matter that they're not getting
Right.
they're a little bit shortfall, okay.
Yeah,
That's
they're a
all I
little
wanted to
short.
know, really.
Yeah, we haven't had a area agency come back to us and say, hey, we got to fold our doors because you're a big drain on us and we need more money. So they haven't worked with Pat, but Pat's in contact with them
Right.
monthly.
She
A
does
lot of
great
the
job
areas.
with-
She
for
does.
budgets
Oh.
as well.
Yeah.
How she figures it all out.
She is,
Yeah,
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 terrific.
she is. She's we talk because she's in my area downstairs.
Yeah.
We have conversations about a lot of these things. So
Okay, you're all set? Thank you, Paul.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We have no minutes.
Now we've gone through our time.
Yeah. Comments from the press, saying none. Comments from the public, also none. Comments from the council. The only thing I want to say is just this last minute, thank God the elections are Tuesday. And again, just reminding people, you should all know, but there's 3 different polling sites. Please make sure you know which one. Don't make an assumption that you were going to the one that you previously might have voted at. I used to go to St. John Newman. I no longer, my redistricting, I'm at JMU's now. So at 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., I would highly recommend you try to, if possible, come sort of in the middle of the day. Usually like 7 to 9 or 7 to 9, 9:30 is a peak. Probably 11 to like 1 is another peak, and then, 4:35 till closing.
3:30.
So if you can sort of fit between them, if you have that capability, I would encourage you to do so. And just be patient. We're going to do as best we can, and, it's going to be busy.
And they're accepting absentee ballots until Monday.
And they're accepting absentee ballots up until Monday. They're getting a lot of them, I know.
One other thing you might add is that the article in today's paper in the Telegraph talked about campaigning and electioneering and all that kind of stuff. And so, as Len pointed out last week, she's not going to accept anybody coming into the polling areas wearing a campaign shirt, a campaign button, and as in the past, campaign signs or pamphlets or anything like that. So don't even bother to come in that way, because it's going to make us feel bad to kick you out or make you take your shirt off. So just understand that the polling places are there for polling, not for campaigning.
And it is based on an RSA.
It's a new, right.
It's a
I
new
think
It's an
regulation.
expansion of the RSA.
This year,
that you,
yes.
you can't have T-shirts or any of those kind of things. But I think they intended that before.
They
It
did.
just wasn't as clear. And so, besides making sure you're going to the right place, make sure you're dressed appropriately, please.
At least in terms of campaign guy. And other ways too.
Well, I wasn't going to say that. But.
I did.
Quite the fashion play, usually.
Okay, motion.
Motion to
by-
adjourn.
Motion made by Bill Boyd, second by Dan Dwyer. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
600.